Smut, give me smut and nothing but a dirty novel I can't shut if it's uncut.
But the thing,
and
okay, my
unsut.
podcast thought for the day, and I actually texted Jess about this, but I was doing errands this morning and I was walking past the bookseller, which is a local bookstore, and background, you can kind of see actually in my literal background that I have a bookshelf over here. It is literally full. I cannot have any more books on it, physical books. It's from like my youth, my childhood, and I have like gone through it and I have like gotten rid of some stuff. And
that's the rule, isn't it? Isn't that your rule that once it gets filled up, you need to give some books away or something?
Like, yes, but also like there are I have some like series that are from my high school days that I actually still read once in a while. Like, I love everything on there is curated and something that I love, and I would recommend to anybody. And like, it's that. And then I also have like my very pretentious classics bookshelf of like the shit that I bought that cost me money that I'm never giving away because it cost me too much money. But and then I walked past it and the third Crescent City in hardcover was there. I looked at it and I like stopped in my tracks and I was like, because it took me forever to get the first one in hardcover. And like once one of the series is in like a certain type, you want to keep it in that way. And I literally stood outside this like bookstore for like a full minute and people were like passing me and I was just staring at it. I must have looked like a murderer, I swear to God. And then I like went in, immediately found it, took it, and I go, I need this, thank you. And she was like, all right. Like, I was having like a war.
You scared the poor person trying to help you.
I must have scared the person. And I got home and I think I texted them. I was like, I'm a failure. I'm so disappointed in myself. Like, I told myself I wasn't going to buy anything else. Nothing can fit on here anymore. Like, I've broken my rules. It's only January. Like, I just felt so bad.
I think we've all done that though.
Yeah.
Like, on the list of sins you could have committed, I think we've all bought the book that we were like, oh my God, I just really need this. And then you'll find room. I think it's fine.
I also have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 books in my physical TBR. And that doesn't include any books that I have to read for upcoming shows here. So like, I already have so many things to read, but I couldn't stop myself. And I just put it down and I was just like, I'm a failure. Like, I literally said
God, can we not start this episode with you calling yourself a failure? Can we maybe just love ourselves a little bit?
Sorry,
and like,
sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. You're not
also,
a failure.
And then
You're
I got
like, look, you didn't go buy drugs on the corner or something.
Yeah.
That's true.
You're a fan.
Well, books are drugs for some people like me, but it's also like my birthday is coming up. Big Red was like, it's for your birthday. And then like our other friend was like, you supported local art, like, or local artists, like by the bookseller. And I was like, okay, I feel a little better now. But that was my foray into like fantasy today, because now I'm just staring at Crescent City 3, ready for it to rock my world. I thought it was appropriate to talk about.
This came out, so that's like all I've been seeing online.
Yeah. Do you read any Sarah J. Maas stuff?
Yes, I read all of Throne of Glass, and then I got really into ACOTAR, but for whatever reason, when I started it, I don't even know, like 4 years ago, I thought it was a completed series, and then somehow I read 2 of the books out of order because it was like
of ACOTAR or of Throne of Glass.
Like, I can't even with novellas.
Yeah.
And then I basically I got upset that it wasn't a completed series, and I kind of haven't. I struggle to go back to things. Like, once I'm done, I'm out. I'm not a huge rereader, so I don't actually have like overflowing bookshelves, because I tend to use I read on my husband's like 15-year-old Nook.
A Nook?
Oh,
yeah, that's some old school shit right there.
He got it like in middle school, and for whatever reason, I've like bonded to it.
But once you find the thing that works, once you find your format, you find your format.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, because it's funny because I had a Kindle like when they first came out, like when
I had the first iteration of Kindles too, and I just got a new one like a year ago.
Well, I remember the first time I ever tried to read a book on it, it didn't have page numbers, and I legitimately had a panic attack. Like,
yeah.
Well, because it has percent.
I never looked at it again, so I didn't think I was an e-reader person, but you know.
Because I do all my reading on my phone, and there are
on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
She's crazy.
Because I started with fanfic, and I started by reading. I had in middle school a flip phone with a web browser, and I would pull up fanfiction.net on my flip phone and read fanfiction on the bus. Yeah.
Once in a blue moon, I'll read on my phone when I just don't have my Kindle or it's like not charged and I need to get something done for this podcast. When I'm behind and I'm reading 50 Shades of Grey.
Panic reading?
Yes.
Panic reading?
Oh.
God.
Hey, speaking of panic reading, welcome to Femmes Reading Phil.
There we go.
I'm Emily.
I'm Jess.
And you've heard another voice. We are joined today by a very special guest, the first in our Romantasy author series.
Yes.
We are joined by author Melanie Moschella.
Which we've just learned.
Okay, yeah.
We've just learned Moschella means mosquito in Italian, and so we know.
You literally told us how to pronounce it, and I went, "Oh God, did I do it wrong?" I never wrote it over.
Moschella.
Yeah. Hi, Melanie. Thanks for coming.
Hello, thanks for having me.
We're very excited to have you, and so thrilled that you wanted to talk to us.
Us two dum-dums.
I think when we first put out the feelers to do this, we were definitely like, yeah, we'll see if anybody wants to, but I don't know that anyone's gonna want to come.
Who wants to talk to us? That was a whole moment we had. But you're the first you're going to be at the Romantasy Festival, which when this comes out, it'll be in March. That festival is March 22nd and 23rd at Otherworld Theater in Chicago. And you and I believe 4 other authors who all write in the romance fantasy, or maybe more just fantasy realm, will be there talking and doing things. We'll be doing a live show with another author there. But yeah, you want to give us your quick elevator, hi, who am I? And this is what I wrote. Do you want to just do that real quick?
Sure, I guess so. This is my debut series coming out, the Raek Rider series. It's coming out all 5 books at once because I am an escapist binge reader and I just couldn't put one book out at a time. I don't know. I kind of wrote them all in a craze in a 9-month period and decided to push them all out at once. And
you wrote 5 books in 9 months.
9 months.
Yeah.
And
I was a new mom, so I started writing when my daughter was 7 months old.
Oh my gosh.
We didn't have childcare, and for some reason I was like, I've been having this daydream for a while. What if I wrote it down? And I did that during naps and when she went to bed at night, and I just kept writing it down, kept coming out, and next thing you know, I had 5 books, and I didn't realize that, writing is the easy part of being an indie author.
Yeah. That's insane. I knew all 5 were coming out, but I didn't realize how short of a time span you wrote them all in. That's bonkers. I'm so jealous.
I'm living on really high levels of anxiety.
I know. I'm so jealous because I certainly I was gonna make a joke, but I'm also living on very high levels of anxiety.
Yeah, that's how we all function.
I think we all are. Yeah. But I did want to ask.
It's anxiety. It's insomnia. It's
yeah.
Turn it into something good.
Having a newborn, I'm sure, helps. All of those things as well. Did the first 2 happen faster, or was there a good flow through the 9 months?
So the first one took me the longest.
Yeah.
And then we also moved in that time. We moved from New Jersey to New Hampshire because I'm a completely crazy person.
Wow.
And the second one, because we had just moved, took me a few months. And then it was boom, 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 boom. I went literally insane. The last 3 books, I wrote each of the first drafts in 2-3 weeks each.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
And then, of course, I had months and months and months of editing.
Yeah.
Are they all along the same length?
They're all exactly the same length.
Really?
I'm actually weird about this. It's my thing that I brag about. Because they're all exactly the same length.
I love
that. That's impressive.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Did you edit to get to that? Were there things that you cut around?
I don't have much of a process, guys. I sat down and wrote these books and they just came out the same length, and it's it's the thing I'm most proud of.
That's
That's
so cool.
incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
because some people have like a very detailed process. Like I follow Katie Robert on Instagram, and she will, and I think Jess does too, and she will like post about her whiteboard with like the post-it notes and like timelines, and it's like very, and like when I wrote my book, I wrote it literally on a piece of paper to be like, oh yeah, this happens, and then I would like write an arrow to be like, I got to put this in before this happens. Like, and it was like messy, but that's how it worked. But like to hear someone just be like, no, I just wrote it. I'm like, damn, that's awesome. That's so cool.
I'm an obsessive like list maker. Like I'll make lists of things as I also have a really bad habit of like coming up with dialogue and stuff when I'm trying to sleep at night, and then I like jot it down on my phone. But I keep a lot of lists. But yeah, for the most part, I don't draft out this is going to be the next chapter and that's going to be the, I just sit down and write it for the most part. But
That's so
and now
cool.
I'm even more excited now to read it.
Because I think we're both.
Does that make you more excited, or does that make you listen to me and be like, this lady has no idea what's going on?
No, more excited.
I love symmetry, so I'm very excited to read books that are the same length that have like I love the all togetherness of it. Like you've really delivered a complete beautiful package is what it sounds like.
A literally complete package. Yeah.
Literally complete, literally like in a circle, they're all the same length, they all relate package. I love it.
Well, I hope you like it. I do feel the need, because this is Femmes Reading Filth, to warn you that the spice takes a while to come into the series. Like it is romancy as a series overall, but it takes a few books to really start spicing up.
It's a slow burn. You got to earn it. I think
that's like
part of any good story. Yeah, you got to build the tension.
Please everyone, because there are people who are going to want you to jump right into it, and people who aren't going to want it there at all. So
go read some porn without plot if that's the case.
Yeah, there's plenty of that too. Like
everywhere.
But yeah, I think it's better if you feel like you know the characters and you feel like they've been on a journey and now it's all happening. And that's definitely the payoff that I like. But I agree, every single time that I've recommended ACOTAR to somebody, I've been like, I need you to reach out to me if you're thinking about stopping it in the first book because there's not any spice, because I promise it's going to be fine, and I'll hype you up and I'll get you to keep going. Yeah, I think I did that to you. I've done that to so many people with ACOTAR.
Probably well, because also like with Sarah J. Maas, just like writings, I think a lot of the time the first 100 pages, it's always like, oh, I'm trudging through this, and then you're like, oh, I'm on a roll. So
yeah, I need to learn all the names of the people and picture them, and sometimes that means it takes me a little bit longer to like get into the thing. I think do you want to give us like a quick summary of just, I realize we talked all about all this, but we haven't actually gotten a quick summary of your series and kind of the Cliff's Notes of it, if you want to maybe talk about that.
Oh gosh, yeah, okay.
You don't have to do the whole thing, but just like
the first book, if you, or whatever you want to tell us.
Really
if a listener was interested,
Yeah, it starts off with main character Mira, and she's, it's new adult, so she's at that stage in life, she's like just left home. She is basically lonely and starts making some impulsive decisions. She volunteers to feed this new dangerous creature that's being held captive at the palace. And, everyone basically thinks she's going to die. She does not die. Spoiler alert, there are 5 books.
Spoilers.
But, she goes on to gain the attention of the king, which is both exciting for her, but also dangerous. And then, she has to kind of decide, like, is she going to obey her king? Is she going to follow her conscience? And there's also, this mysterious hunky guy being held prisoner, who she's asked to care for. And yeah, the first book starts out in her homeland, and then I'll just say from there she goes to another land where a race of magical people live.
Cool.
So there's all sorts of stuff later. Yeah.
Love this female main character. We got some like royalty aspects in there. We got some creature aspects. I love all of that.
Yeah. Very cool.
Which takes us into the trope high fantasy.
High fantasy romance.
But
high fantasy though.
Yeah. But Jess, I believe, did a tiny bit of research on.
I did a tiny. let's not even call it research. I looked up a definition because when we landed on this trope, and also when we got asked to do the Romantasy Festival,
Mm-hmm.
I realized that I didn't actually know the difference between, I didn't understand why we called it high fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I looked up, because I just didn't, I was like, okay, so what's the difference between like just fantasy and high fantasy?
Yeah.
And apparently high fantasy it's characterized by a couple of things, but it's usually set somewhere that isn't Earth. So it's its own kind of world with its own rules and its own, creatures or whatever. So like Lord of the Rings is what I kept thinking of when I kept like thinking of these definitions. And usually it's kind of a classic epic hero's tale in a lot of ways. So we've got our main character. They're usually pulled between the forces of good and evil. There's some kind of a moral conundrum that they're trying to not even solve, but wrestle with as like throughout the series. Like the series is raising questions of like what is right and what is wrong in this world, and like a power struggle of some kind between not just our main character, but some element that is bigger or more powerful than they are. And so all of those elements together make high fantasy what it is, according to Wikipedia and several other things that
We love Wikipedia.
Googled.
We love it.
Yeah, but like the Lord of the Rings, with the Akatars, the Raek Riders, all of those that kind of have created their own universe, and it's not like a Harry Potter, which is set on Earth, but there's a separate
magical
little society
world in there. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly.
As far as high fantasy goes, I'll say I'm on the low end of high fantasy, I guess, because I'm not making anyone learn a language. Like,
thank you.
High fantasy only goes so far for me. Like, I try to keep my world building down to a minimum, just because that's not what's important, for me at least. Like the character development, the emotion, like the feelings are what's important. And so yeah, it's funny. It's like you're high fantasy, and I'm like, well, I guess, but
you are. Yeah,
it's in that world. Yeah. And
it's definitely its own world, and it's got its own crazy names that I made up, but
and I
which
totally
count.
agree with you. Like for me, it's always the characters and the emotions that connect with me. Like I always tell the story of my dad is not a big reader, but one of the only series I know he's ever read is Lord of the Rings, and he and I are complete opposites, because he was really upset that the second movie didn't spend enough time talking about the lore of the Ents. And he was really annoyed that like, oh, they didn't get into like the politics of the Ents. And whereas I was like, I saw 6 pages of J.R.R. Tolkien talking about trees, and I kind of skimmed past it because I wanted to hear the dialogue.
Talking about trees.
I honestly could not get through all of the Lord of the Rings.
I'm the same way.
The Hobbit,
don't tell anyone.
But the Lord of the Rings is great. Way too much world building for me, and just I couldn't.
It's the writing style.
My husband is obsessed, but
my brother likes it. My boyfriend likes it. I love the movies. Could not get through The Hobbit, and I couldn't read. It's just the writing style that I was like, oh, this isn't for me. But I love the story. Glad someone made it into a movie. Can't read it.
Yeah.
Love the movies.
Love the movies. Hobbit movies, meh. Lord of the Rings trilogy, amazing. I have a question about just like fantasy in general for you, Melanie, and like obviously we can also say our own things, but is there an aspect of like the fantasy trope, like when you're reading or even like when you were writing, that you were like, this is one of my favorite things in a fantasy novel, this is what I would want to read about? Like, is there something in that you're always like, you're reading the back of a book and you're like, oh, it has this? Yes, I'm in.
I don't think I wrote that consciously, but I will say I've got like, as I was writing, I was kind of like, wow, this is such a trope. I've got like the blonde evil prince. And I was like, this is such a trope, but I'm into it. It's not like, I wasn't like, oh, he's too overdone. It's like Game of Thrones all over again. Like I was just sort of like, nah, I'm keeping it. Like No, as far as I'm concerned, every fantasy series can have like a sociopathic blonde prince, and I think that's okay.
Yes.
And is the hunky mysterious man brunette, or does he have
Curly
black
hair.
hair?
He has
Curly hair
dark hair.
brunette.
Dark
Not
hair.
Their
quite.
olive tone
No,
skin.
he's not Jon Snow, unfortunately.
Okay. But it's always the mysterious hunk, I feel like, has to have dark hair.
Yeah.
And
He has to be a bit of a shadow daddy. That's what my
Yeah.
husband and I would call him. But
What
Shadow
a good
daddy.
shadow daddy. Oh my
Oh,
god.
I'm gonna
We're
use
gonna steal
that. I'm gonna use that for my
that, by the
fanfic.
way, could be a whole episode of shadow daddies. Serious
I'm writing that
romantic
down.
trope.
Please write down Shadow. At the very least, we make a T-shirt that says
Oh my
Shadow
God.
Daddies on it.
Do you have like a fantasy thing that you're always like, yes, I want to read it?
I am a sucker for a shadow daddy. Like
Isn't everyone?
it's a thing. It's just a thing. It's always been a thing. And so yeah, like a dark, mysterious man, but he likes you even though he's evil. Like that's always gonna get me. So the opposite of the blonde evil prince.
Yeah.
The guy that looks scary but has a heart of gold because he's a shadow daddy. What about you?
I think
Emily?
my favorite thing, the main character. So I like a main character who's a girl, and I like a main character girl who's a secret badass. So like there's some books where it's like, oh, like I'm kind of meek, but I'll learn along the way. And I like the ones that start out where they're like, I'm kind of meek, actually not. And they like remove their cloak and they have a dagger and they have all that stuff. So I like that. Like,
you want her to be an assassin right away.
I want an assassin. I want a strong, sassy assassin female character right away. But also I like it the other way too, where it's a girl who like comes into her own. But also I like female main characters because I'm a female and I like to think that could be me one day, fighting
when you grow up.
We all want to picture ourselves. I mean,
yes,
that's
exactly.
Which was why it was so hard to come up with a description for my main character, honestly.
Really?
Was it just
I
you?
tried to make her very in between for that reason. I was like, well, the majority of people have brown hair and the majority of people have brown eyes, and she's kind of an in-between shape and she's kind of an in-between skin tone. And I was like, cool.
Yeah, because
the every
that
girl.
Most people are going to be, that most readers are going to be at some point kind of picturing a little bit of themselves.
Right.
Like
Mira's not like, she doesn't have silver hair and purple eyes. She's very much like an every woman and who is like coming into her own and developing
like that.
as the story goes. But
I like that.
I gotta find a lady with blue hair for my.
I'm sure there's one.
I'm sure there's one somewhere.
I love
but
blue hair, by the way.
Thank you.
Doesn't she look so cool? She just looks like so. And then there's me. Sorry, I'm here, but
I mean, I'm like filthy, but.
Okay, wait. Last question though. Just the opposite of that. Is there something that you're like, this is so overdone? I'm kind of like, it's good, but I don't like to read it anymore. I need a break from it in the terms of like fantasy tropes. But
I'm pretty sick of like the school for people with abilities trope. I'm pretty much over that. Vampire Academies, like Harry Potter, Fourth Wing, even like just any kind of like school atmosphere.
It's been done.
I'm a little bit sick of. Yeah. And I say that, and the next one I could completely blow my mind, or who knows, in like 3 years from now I'll be writing one. But at this moment in time,
yeah, because they all do kind of that trope contains many other smaller tropes that are then also consistent. So I feel like it is very hard to then feel like you're in a unique world once you've read a lot of them.
That can definitely be an issue. Which is part of the reason I decided to kind of like not go with literal dragons in my books. I went with Raken.
What's the difference between Raken and dragons?
Raken have feathers, so I basically and it's tough. It's like it's basically a dragon with feathers, but at the same time, it's like, okay, everyone has read books about dragons. Everyone has preconceived notions of what a dragon is. How do you get around that without them just like immediately comparing your book to other books?
Right.
And so I just did just like these little things. Like I didn't call, like I have a magical race. I don't call them elves or fae. I call them something else. It's like making these really small distinctions while also not wanting people to have to like imagine a completely ridiculous made up creature that, you know, is like part this, part that, part something else.
Yeah, like a full stretch of the
Yeah, it's
imagination.
like finding
you
that
wanna...
in between space.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a middle ground.
When you said feathers, I immediately was like, oh, it's a griffin. And then it's like, okay, no, it's a dragon with feathers. Okay. I'm like, this is hard to imagine, but I like it. I can't wait to like
No,
read
I've
the
got
description. I like this.
I think I've got it.
Yeah.
You've got it.
I might, I might Google it later, but I think I've got it.
I'm going to Google dragon with feathers just in case.
Google
Just in
dragon
case
with
something's
feathers.
out there. Any more questions about high fantasy? Anyone? Or should we get into our synopses?
I want to hear what you have to tell me.
Okay. Melanie, you good? Do you have any more
I'm
questions or anything?
I'm good.
You're like an expert in fantasy, so I feel like you wouldn't have
I'm
any.
definitely not, but
She
okay.
knows what she's doing.
You wrote even a page about fantasy, and you're an expert. You're more expert than we are, so you're good. So I read From Blood and Ash by Jennifer Armentrout.
Oh my gosh, I just started that. Okay.
Did you really? Oh no, I'm
Yeah.
so
Okay.
well. Okay, I'm
No,
not going to
it's
say
okay,
the
it's
ending.
fine. My husband and I were listening to the audiobook together, and we only made it a couple chapters in, and then he finished it without me. So I don't know if I'm still
Wow.
listening. or
Both of
not.
us just went rude.
Betrayal. The betrayal.
I'm not going to spoil the ending for you, but
He kind of spoiled the twist for me, which honestly,
Okay.
like, completely blew my mind. If you know what I'm talking.
Yeah.
yes, I'm actually going to stop before the twist, so don't worry.
Okay.
But like,
Yes,
but
listeners, if anyone hasn't read From Blood and Ash, first, we highly recommend. Second, there is a twist, and it is very good, and you should read it. Anyway.
It's really, the whole series is
Yeah.
fantastic. It came out March 29th, 2020, and it is 622 pages, which I did not realize. And
That's insane to me.
I finished it. Again, I've read this like multiple times, and I finished it yesterday because it takes me longer to like read it and take notes. But like, I've never realized how long it is because I read it through Kindle. So I was just like, la la la, like I speed through this. So yeah, and if I like miss anything, Melanie and Jess, you can like chime in because now we all know what I'm talking about. So in the country of Solace, Poppy is in disguise, and she is playing cards with guards from the Rise at the local bar.
It's all coming back to me. I haven't read this fucking book in like 3 years, and I can see the same thing that I saw when I first started reading it. Go on. Sorry. It's all happening behind my eyes right now.
She's in disguise. She's wearing a domino mask, which I had to look up. I think it's basically just like an eye kind of mask. Like your mouth is visible. She has like a blue cloak over her hair and her face. And the guards from the Rise is just basically like a huge like wall pretty much that surrounds the city. Like if we're thinking of the wall from fucking Game of Thrones or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of what I pictured, but around a city. And she chose to sit at this table and play with these guards because she can usually feel someone's pain or feelings, but from these guys, she's not feeling anything. And so she's feeling like, oh, I can just be normal and I can play cards and I can have a good time and I don't have to worry about everyone's emotions.
Yep.
But so she's like, oh, okay, this is like a safe place to play. We learn that she is the maiden, the chosen, and it is written that way and it drives me crazy. It's always the maiden, period, the chosen. And I was just like, just why is it both? It's so
At
weird.
a certain point, it's a lot.
Of Macedonia, which is like the capital city. She is someone who was bestowed, quote unquote, a gift from the gods. And she usually wears a veil. So she's not too worried about people recognizing her. And I, when I first read this, didn't understand like what kind of veil. Like I thought it was just like a gauzy thing. And then I've seen a lot of pictures and it's like a full on like, cloth. And then like with these chains and it looks like really scary.
It's kind of like a burqa, right? Like it's a full
But
covering.
well, it's
That's
to
what I
her
always
like
pictured.
nose, I think.
Okay.
And then it's like chains that kind of hold it in place. So you only ever see her mouth and it's all white. She, as the maiden, she wears all white and chains, which I'm like, ooh. Yeah. Have you guys seen any pictures of like what that veil is supposed to look like?
No.
Look it up after this. It's really creepy.
Okay.
Your homework tonight. Look up the veil. So she's not too worried about people recognizing her because she usually has her face covered. But with the domino mask that obscures her face right now, she's feeling like good and like a normal person, and she's playing cards. And the guards, while they're all playing, start talking about a fellow guard who was killed, how all the blood was drained from him. And she's kind of listening, and she's like, oh God, like, I think I know what that means. But, the guards stop talking because they're like, we're in mixed company, blah, 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 blah. In a year, when she's 19, she is going to ascend. We learned that the ascended are the people that are like kind of in charge. They're the higher ups, the lords and ladies, the queen and king. The ascended have these black eyes and are made in the image of the gods. So they're very beautiful. They live for a long time. Some of them have met the gods. Some of them talk to them. And they usually walk around at night, much like the gods do. So she's experiencing all of this. She's having kind of a good time. And she gets up to kind of get a drink, and she's just watching everyone when all of a sudden her personal guard, Victor, who is kind of a father figure to her, walks in, and she's like, oh my God, Victor's going to kill me. Like, this is not going to be good. Oh my gosh. And
a brothel too, right?
It's like part
So
brothel,
she's like
part...
really embarrassed to see him there.
Yes, especially
Oh,
because
yeah.
like another woman like cozies up to him, and she's like, why is Victor and this woman like sitting on each other? And this
It
like,
would be like seeing your dad
I
at
don't
a
want to talk
strip
about that.
club or something. Ugh. So she sees her dad
She
at
sees
a
her
gentleman's club.
practically dad at a gentleman's club, and this woman who basically like knows who she is, and it's a very mysterious woman. It's kind of in this moment, a throwaway. But this woman's like, you should just go upstairs, like 6th door on the left. It's probably free. You can go and hang out until, he leaves. And she's like, thank you. She runs upstairs to hide. She goes into this room that she was told to. And it is currently occupied by Hawk Flynn, which, what a name, Hawk Flynn.
That name made my husband and I laugh like every single time they I'm sorry.
Hawk.
I think it's
Isn't it
the
Hawk
last...
with an E too?
Yes,
Isn't it?
it's
Yeah.
Hawke. I don't mind Hawk as a first name, but I don't know why. It's the Flynn as the last name that kind of makes me be like, I don't know why. And she knows him
For
from
some
afar.
reason, I think I remember Hawk Flynn smelled like pine or something. All men in these kinds of books smell like pine.
Sandalwood
Yes.
and pine or
Yeah, all
something.
these cinnamon.
It's
I
that
don't know what it
specific.
was.
It's that
We
candle
laughed
from
about it.
Bath and Body Works. It's that like
I was reading
tobacco.
one, and it was like specifically they would say that his breath always smelled like cinnamon. It was like something that I was reading, and I think it put me off enough that I didn't finish reading it.
I understand like chewing cinnamon gum all the time, but I don't want to smell someone's breath constantly. Like,
And it came up a lot. It came up
No,
way
I'm not
too
like,
much.
ooh, what hot breath you have.
No.
and she knows who this guy is. She knows who Hawk Flynn is because he's the new guard and he's super duper hot. And all the ladies in waiting, who she's not really allowed to talk to because she's the maiden, but she hears things. Everyone's talking about him. Everyone's talking about how hot he is, how they all want to bang him pretty much. And she comes into this room and he's like, oh, hello. And we learn that she stole this cloak that she's currently wearing from a maid called Britta. He thinks that she's the maid, and he goes up and he immediately like kisses her. And she's like, oh my God, I'm the maiden. This is my first kiss. It's super hot. What the heck? They kind of like start bantering. She won't take off her mask. She won't take off her like hood. And he's very much like, you're not Britta. Like, usually she sticks her tongue down my throat, and you are very not doing that. So what's going on? And he like pins her to the bed, and she kind of likes it. But she's like, I don't know what to do. She has like her dagger strapped to her thigh, and he's like, look at this dagger. And it's like this, like he's kind of touching her, and she likes it, but she's like, I don't know what to do. And as they're like about to kiss again, a knock comes at the door, and it's his like fellow guard, Kieran, and he has a meeting to go to. And he's like, stay here. I want to talk to you. And she's like, okay, sounds good. And he leaves, and then she immediately like runs away. And I was like, love that, Poppy. Good for you. But
What did he think was going to happen?
what did he think? I don't know. Well, he thought that he was hot stuff and that she would stay.
To be honest, he like lays on top of her for a long time, and she basically doesn't do anything about it. It's a little weird. So it's like, I didn't get to the end of that scene. That's basically where my husband took over and finished it without me. But
Got it.
I'm almost surprised that she did run away because
Yeah, she was so
It's,
into
I
it.
mean, it's very like, there's a lot of bantery moments, but it's a lot of her being like, she's kind of saying no. But she's not at the same time. It's like a weird, like, this is inappropriate. So it's kind of a like leading to get off me, no, but it's a, this is inappropriate, but I kind of like it. But it's inappropriate. You know what I mean? So it's that no meaning yes type of like consent that is in the real world very not okay and very like issue-y. But in this book, I'm like, I love it. It's so cute. So something to talk to Lauren about. Hi, therapist.
We love a gray area.
We love a gray area. The next day, Tawny, her lady in waiting, and her, it's like her only friend. It's the only person she can talk to, really, besides Victor. They're talking about her adventure up to, it's the Red Pearl. That's what the bar was called. And she doesn't tell Tawny that she kissed Hawk or that she even like ran into him, but she basically tells her about like how she went, how she played cards, she had a drink, like, and then she saw Victor and she freaked out. And Tawny's like, that's okay. Like, next time, bring me with you. Oh my gosh, beep boop bop. And Victor comes in and tells her, they're all just hanging out in her room. And Victor comes in and he's like, hey, we are needed. Someone's been cursed. And so she puts on all her stuff and her and Victor go out into the city. She is not allowed to. She is the maiden. And we like learn things as the story goes. So I'm going to tell it like I read it, basically, instead of doing a bunch of info dump at the top. She's not allowed to go out into the city. They sneak out and they go to this house of a man who was out beyond the rise hunting, and he comes back with a craven bite. And if he's not like taken care of, he will turn into a craven and he will start killing people within the rise. And that's a big no-no because obviously like they'll all turn into these monsters and yada, yada, yada. We learned that a craven is basically like a big hairy beast with large teeth and claws. That's kind of all we hear about at the beginning. They go, Poppy uses her gift on this man. First she uses her gift on the Agnes, the wife. And we learn that in addition to feeling someone's pain, she can also take away their pain. So she feels that Agnes is like clearly upset. She's very sad. And she kind of touches her skin and she thinks of like the beaches and she thinks of her parents and like this wonderful day that she had. And she immediately like takes Agnes's pain away. And she's like, it's this like visible like sigh and like, okay, I'm going to go make some tea. And like she goes in to this guy who's clearly like he's about to change. She can see like his teeth are starting to grow, and she takes his pain away, and then she stabs him with her dagger. The way to kill a craven is to either like get them in the head or the heart. And so she's basically, her and Victor are helping these people die with dignity, and that's forbidden. It's basically treason to not tell the crown and to not tell the authorities about this. So she's trying to help people. It's not allowed, but she feels good about it. She's like, yeah, this is great.
I don't remember. Did they tell you what the crown is supposed to do about it? Okay.
Like take them away and kill them like poorly, whereas this way it's more like a humane way. But they never they never outright say it. So
okay.
But I feel
just
like
was curious.
To imply that she helps them die with dignity, I think is
that's what made me
just think the opposite, and that's probably what the crown is doing.
Okay.
She goes back. Rylan, her other guard, and her are walking. She does her like nightly walk. She needs to get out of her room sometime. She's completely veiled, and she runs into Lord Mazine. The people in Carcedonia, where she is currently living, or I'm sorry, Macedonia. Carcedonia is the like capital. I misspoke earlier. It's the Duke and Duchess Tierman who are like in charge there. Lord Mazine is like another high up lord, and he's like BFF with the Duke, and he's super duper creepy. And he stops them. He's like, hello, maiden. And she's like, I'm not supposed to talk to anyone. Like, you know this? And he's like, I think you can talk to me. And he kind of like touches her arm, and Rylan, like the guard, doesn't know what to do. And it's this whole like, he's so creepy and I hate him, and he's ascended. Everyone who's like high up is ascended, just in case I didn't say that. And they can't really do anything. And then as soon as he's like getting really close to her and he's like sniffing her and she's like, this is so gross. There's a scream, and they like run across the hallway and they find a maid dead. And there are like jasmine flowers all around her. And there is no blood, but there are 2 puncture holes in her neck. Poppy sees this and she's kind of like freaked out by it. Rylan ushers her away, and the next day everything's covered up and no one talks about it. And she's like, what the fuck was that? A maid was just killed. There was no blood. Like, could it have been a craven? But no, like there was no, claw marks. Like maybe it was an Atlantean. The Atlanteans are creatures who apparently made the craven 400 years ago in this war between the two queens. And so they're these basically mystical figures. They have fangs, and they like must live far away, or they're all extinct. Like we don't know, but they're basically the bad guys in Poppy's mind. So the next night, she's still disturbed that this whole thing was covered up, but Ryland's like, let's go on a walk again. Let's go to the garden. It's your favorite place. And her and Ryland walk to the garden, and they're looking at the night blooming roses, and they're having a wonderful time. And she's looking up, and she hears Ryland go, yeah, these roses always remind me of, and then there's nothing. And she turns around, and there is an arrow sticking out of Ryland's neck. And she realizes that in the crack, in the crack in the garden where she can usually sneak out into the city, there is a bad guy there who has just shot Ryland. This huge guy comes up. He has shaggy hair. I think of him as like, do you guys watch Boy Meets World? There's like a, Frankie Stechino. Well, basically his dad is a wrestler. He's like a very large man, just big and large. I think of that guy with shaggy hair as the bad guy.
It's a very deep cut that you just threw at us.
I've also been listening to the Pod Meets World podcast, Boy Meets World podcast, so like just constantly on my mind, Boy Meets World stuff. And this huge guy comes up, and he basically tries to kidnap Poppy. And little does he know that she has her dagger that's strapped to her thigh. And we learn that Victor, her surrogate father, basically has been training Poppy in secret for years to defend herself, because she wants to be able to defend herself against a craven attack, against anything.
We love that.
As he advances towards her, she takes out her dagger. She does like 2 quick stabs, like one in his back and one kind of in his shoulder. But he's really fast. He shakes her off. She's able to like arc her dagger and cuts off like his fingers, which I was like, amazing. I love that. And like she's about to like, she gets into fighting stance again, but he like hits her basically across the jaw. She's feeling a little out of it. And there's a whistle, like a high-pitched dog whistle. And this guy's like, okay, I gotta go, but I'll be back. And she's like, the fuck? And he like leaves. She goes, she tries to take Ryland's pain away as he dies, but it's too late. He's already gone.
I remember crying when I read that part.
Yeah,
really
it's really abrupt.
Sad. And it's really abrupt, and they like care about each other, and she's trying to like make him feel better.
Well, and he's so nice too, but I think you might be thinking of another part coming up too. But
I'm thinking of both parts that I cried at.
And so she hides her dagger, and she's covered in his blood, and she just starts walking out of the garden being like, help. And everyone's like, holy shit, the maiden, blah, 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 blah. So everything is taken care of. Ryland's body is wrapped up, ready to go for the funeral the next day. And Victor's like, you're not going, you're the maiden. And she's like, Ryland was my friend, and blah, 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 blah. And so at dawn the next morning, he leads her out to the pier, where they're going to light him on fire. And it's like a really solemn moment, all this stuff. And Victor has to go light the fire because they were the closest that worked together. And as he does that, he realizes he can't leave Poppy alone. Even in this sea of guards, he can't just leave her by herself. And who should walk up but Hawk at that moment and goes, I have her body. Don't worry. And Poppy's immediately like, oh my God, the hot guy is standing next to me. But she's like, no, but Ryland is dead. I'm going to focus on that.
I'm grieving. I can't focus on the hot man.
I'm grieving, but this pine-scented man is next to me. Like, and I was just like, oh, I feel that so hard. The Duke and Duchess are trying to find a replacement for Ryland, because she always needs to have 2 personal guards. Victor needs time off, as we all do. And they summon her finally. And they sit down, and they go, hey, Hawk is going to be your new guard. And she's like, this new guy? Not any of the people who have been here for years who like deserve promotions or whatever. And they're like, no, the captain of the guard requested him. Like, he's new. He's going to see things that people who are more familiar with this place haven't seen. We trust him, but you're going to have to take off your veil so he knows what you look like. And in this room, it's only the Duke, Duchess, it's Tawny, it's Victor, and it's Hawk, and she's so nervous because this is the guy that kissed her. This is the guy, that like at least knows what her face like from nose down looks like, and she even spoke with him. So she's like, okay, can't speak in front of Hawk because he'll know it's me. Like, I'm really worried he's gonna recognize me. At least my hair is up like in braids, he can't really see it. And she takes her time taking off her veil, and we learn that she's incredibly beautiful, but the left side of her face has like a big scar on it. Basically, it has like I think it's 1 or 2 lines that go from her eyebrow to like her, like the top of her lip.
Another trope.
I love a good scar.
I do too.
It's
Some kind of
character.
a face thing. Yeah.
Yeah, always need a face thing. And we learned that because she's scarred because when she was a kid, she was in the middle of a Craven attack. And she is not only scarred on her face, but she has one on her arm. She has one kind of on her torso and on her inner leg. And they are from Craven bites and scratches. And she is the only person to have ever been attacked by a Craven and not turn into one. Therefore, being another reason she is a gift from, the gods. She is the maiden, the chosen. And so
The maiden, the chosen.
The maiden, the chosen.
The maiden, period.
The maiden,
chosen,
period. The chosen. She takes off her veil, and the Duke is like, isn't it such a shame? She's so fucking gross. And she kind of like looks at him and like smiles. And the Duke, fun fact, has super blonde hair and very pale skin.
Well, would
Those
you
are
look
these
at that?
untrustworthy blonde guys?
That's why we don't date blondes
No.
anymore. And Hawk in that moment's like, I don't know what you're talking about. She's beautiful. And she's like, huh? And it's like this whole moment, and her heart skips a beat. And then they're like, okay, let's put our veil back on and gotta go. Tawny and her get back to her room, and they're both like, oh my God, he's so hot. And basically they're like, okay, he's right outside the room. Like, we're just like, you know what? I'm the maiden, the chosen. Like, I can't be saying this. Let's never talk about this again. He watches over her. She like goes and hangs out with Tawny, and these other 2 ladies come by, so she has to be like completely quiet and demure as they're all chatting. She watches as these 2 girls like fawn over Hawk. Basically, they keep pretending to like faint and drop their coin purse, and like, they bend over and all their cleavage is coming out, and she just kind of keeps under her veil like looking at Hawk, and he's just kind of like amused.
I'm just picturing Kitty from the Pride and Prejudice movie when she like tosses her handkerchief at the officers so that they can be introduced, and then they just trample the handkerchief and don't see her.
Yes. I think that's, and then Tawny's kind of laughing too, but she's like trying to be, because she's the one that can be seen. Poppy's just like completely veiled and like, these dumbasses, but also fascinating. Offices. And as they're hanging out, she gets a summons from the Duke, and her and Tawny immediately sober up. Tawny kind of nods at her and goes, I'll go get a salve. And she leaves, and Hawk escorts Poppy up to the Duke's chambers. He's like, why are you freaking out? And she's trying not to talk or anything. And he goes, well, at least your maid is going to go help you later. And she goes, she is not a maid. She is a lady in waiting. And he goes, oh, he's speaking. And so they start bantering as they're like walking up to the Duke's, place. And we learn that this is a regular occurrence. And every time that she like, quote unquote, disappoints the Duke. So, when he called her ugly to her face and she smiled, that was a disappointment. He basically like uses corporal punishment on her. He makes her take off, the back of her dress, and he will use a cane, and he will basically whip her, being like, you're a disappointment to the gods. And this is just some people know about it. No one can do anything. Why could she? He's an ascended. He's the Duke. He's in charge. She's just the maiden. She can't show anyone. So it's this like kind of terrible moment, but she doesn't tell Hawk. He isn't there when she comes out of the Duke's chambers. It's actually Victor there, who knows what goes on. He escorts her back to her room, where Tawny helps her put this like salve on her back. And for the next 2 days, she's basically just like in her room, hanging out, like ashamed because this happened again. And no one knows what to do, and it's sad. 2 days go by. That night, she's looking out of her window, and she's basically healed. The salve was amazing. She had like welts on her back, and they're pretty much, okay. And she's looking out the window, and she's kind of seeing all the torches on the rise, and she realizes one goes out. She's like, what the fuck? And the wind picks up and a mist starts creeping in. And everyone knows that when the mist comes, that means Craven are very close behind. And this is one of the first times ever that the Craven are about to attack the city and the Rise. And so she goes, okay, I have 3 minutes. I'm going to go fucking kill some Craven. So she grabs her bow, she grabs her arrow. Tawny runs into the room. The alarm has been sounded. Tawny's like, what are you doing? You are the maiden, the chosen. You cannot like go out there. Like you can't fight Craven. And she's like, watch me. She puts on a cloak. She just has her like thin nightdress on. She has like slippers, but she puts on a cloak and like covers her head with her bow and arrow. She runs and
Girl,
she
that's not gonna do anything. That
I guess it
little hood
will.
isn't gonna do anything.
I don't know how her hood stays on and how it stays on low
like,
enough to like cover her eyes
she's
and how
got-
she runs with her eyes
How can
covered
she
by a hood.
fight
She's got
with a hood
double-sided-
over her whole head.
Yeah. You know those
I
like
can't even
that's
think
fair.
when there's a hood on my head.
you know those like combs, like those back combs that like people put
Mhm.
veils. I feel like there's just a comb sewn into every hood that she has. I don't know.
See, I was picturing that like double-sided boob tape that you
But
put
on her
just to
hair?
keep- but like right here on
Oh,
the
like right
hairline
there.
to keep
And then
to
so
keep
it's just
the veil on.
so the front of
Yeah.
it's just flapping, but it's
So
like
she's got
so-
like 3 pieces of double-sided tape like right here, and then she just go, and then it's
Also,
like my bangs.
to run to where so she runs to an empty like parapet because everyone else, you know, who was supposed to be on the Rise is down in front of it to like fight the
Yeah.
Craven because they're like these animal type things basically.
Yeah.
But she also finds like extra quivers and bows. So she's like, great, I got a whole arsenal of like arrows. But like she keeps her hood on while she shoots arrows. And I'm like, bitch, how are you like, and she's really good. She hits every time. And a Craven can only be killed if they're struck through the head or the heart. Like, guys, I know it's fantasy, but still, like, I was just like, this makes me angry.
You had
But
a hard time with that particular
with
those
that
logistics.
one logistic. But so she immediately, you know, grabs the bow. She starts shooting Craven. She saves. She even sees Victor all the way down there, and she saves him from a Craven a few times. And she's like, "Ooh, I wonder if Victor knows I'm up here. He probably does." And she sees a lot of people go down. It's really sad. But basically, the Cravens start to even climb the rise. She shoots a bunch down. No one gets over it, and everyone is safe. And she's like, "Okay, that was really intense, but I'm really happy I helped. Like, time to go back to my room." And she turns to leave the parapet, and who is standing there on the rise but Hawk Flynn. And she still has her cloak covering her, but he's like, I knew it. You're the girl from the Red Pearl. Like, you're here. What are you, a goddess? Oh my gosh. And she's thinking like, okay, he knows I'm the girl from the Red Pearl, but does he know that that's also the maiden? And yada, yada, yada. So she tries to get past him. The maiden, the chosen. I'm so sorry. She tries to get past him, and they both start like, they're kind of bantering, and then there's also like a fight. Like she keeps trying to like move around him, and he's really fast, and she like takes a dagger and she throws it, trying to like get him, you know, out of the way, and he like narrowly misses it, and he like skids. It's this whole like weird, like a tiny action sequence, but it's like a fight, but it's not really to the death. It's to like just get him away from her. And he like finally like kind of holds her. He like grabs her, grapples, if you will, from a D&D standpoint, grapples her and is like, oh, princess. And oh, I forgot to say this in the beginning. In the beginning at the Red Pearl, he called her princess. And he like basically takes off her hood and is like, maiden, the chosen, the princess. And she's like, oh, and then like that's where the chapter ends, and you're like, ooh, this is scary. And so basically he lets her go, and he's like, get back to your room. She runs back to her room. Tawny is there. She's like, oh my God, tell me everything. Hawk comes in. He's like, Tawny, get the fuck out of here. I need to talk to the maiden. And she's like, nuh-uh. And Hawk's like, she's going to tell you everything anyways. Leave, because I just caught her outside and we need to talk. And Tawny's like, oh shit, and like just runs away. And Poppy's like, okay, well, here's the thing. When I was younger, I was with my parents. We were traveling. I was attacked by a Craven. Like our whole family was. My parents died. My brother and I survived. That's why I know how to protect myself now, because Victor has taught me all this stuff. And she kind of like spills all this, and he's like, okay, and basically like leaves. And she's like, oh God, he's gonna tell the Duke, like, I'm gonna end up getting another, quote unquote punishment. Oh my gosh. And he ends up not telling the Duke. He's like, he comes back, he's like, I'm not gonna say anything. We're good. But he does tell Victor. And the next morning, like at training, Victor's just standing there with his arms crossed, like, what the fuck? Like, and he gives her a very stern, yeah, she disappointed dad.
Which the entire time that I was reading this and the entire time now, Victor is Jorah Mormont from Game of Thrones. Like the Khaleesi guy.
Yes.
That is
I'm glad you said that, because I also think of him as
really?
that. Yes.
It's the energy
hair
of him. It's the concerned, gentle dad energy.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. Were you picturing anyone in particular?
Hold on. Don't answer that, Melanie, because I'm going to have you guys picture people later.
Okay,
yes,
never mind.
It's my game. Okay. Victor just, has like sandy blonde hair. He's like in his 40s, which is really impressive for a guard, because guards usually die before they like hit middle age. So Victor's like, Poppy, get your shit together. And she's like, okay. The Duke holds like a mass, like talk to the masses kind of thing. And he tries to comfort everyone about the Craven attacks. And a dissenter, who we learn is a follower of the Dark One, who is the lead, quote-unquote, Atlantean that is in direct opposition to the crown. So basically the bad guys' followers are called dissenters. She feels anger for the first time, rather than just pain, from a certain man. He's a very angry-looking blonde man. And this guy starts walking up towards the stage, and he takes out a severed hand and he throws it. And Poppy, who is also on stage because she is the maiden, period, the chosen. And she sees that it's a Craven hand. And she's like, how the fuck did this guy get a Craven hand? Like, that means he had to go outside of the rise. That means this, yada, yada, yada. And it's a big, like, upset. While he throws this hand on stage, he makes a claim that, like, the children haven't been seen and this and this. And, as a reader, we're like, what? We learned that the third and fourth sons of families are children that are given to the temples in order to serve the gods. And they never are seen again, only by the priests and priestesses, because they are, property of the temples now. And so he makes a claim of like, you killed them. And everyone's like, they're in the temples. What are you talking about? Hawk and Poppy are talking after this happens. He's escorting her back to her room. And, she starts to feel unease at what this dissenter said. And Hawk's like, a lot of people, I think, are starting to feel like that. And it starts to kind of make Poppy be like, something feels weird. Something doesn't feel right. She visits the Duchess to tell her that she started feeling anger rather than just pain. And she also started to feel fear in the crowd. And the Duchess is like, don't use your gift. It's from the gods. Like, you're not allowed to use it. You're getting closer to ascension, so it's probably like changing, but like, don't worry about it. Like, don't even use it. Don't try not to tap into it.
Think about it. Don't talk about it. Don't tell anyone about it. Like, it's chill, but don't tell
I see you thinking about it. Don't think about it.
And
she's like, okay, I'm the maiden. That's fine. She like, it's so, there's all these instances where she's like, this is happening. Someone's like, okay. And she goes, oh, okay. And as you keep reading, you're like, all these things are adding up, and she's starting like to kind of have a mind of her own to realize this, but it's, she doesn't know what to do, but that's what she's been taught. And
do you guys get like frustrated at the characters when this happens, or are you able to have more self-control than me and go, oh, this is part of the development, it's fine, it will be okay? Because I find myself getting mad.
I think if you're thinking about the development, then, like, the development's maybe not doing its job. Like,
I'm more mad at, like, the world.
That's fair.
Like, yeah. I'm mad at the government system that keeps pushing this, because I'm like, I'm with the main character. I'm like, this doesn't feel right.
I'm in full, like, watching a scary movie, like, bitch, why did you go through that doorway? We all know what's like, what are you doing? That's my mad. Like, I get angry at the main character.
Well, and so this starts to like culminate because she has the weekly sessions with the priestess Analia, I think is the name, which I don't like to say, so I'm just gonna say the priestess. She has a session, and these are regular, and the priestess basically sucks. She's like this really old, mean, ascended lady, and during these sessions, she just reads like the history of Solace, and she's reading about the War of the Two Queens and how the queen in Macedonia like was able to beat back the queen of Atlantia, and the Atlanteans are evil, and they created the Craven, and they are a purge on our society, and all this stuff. And they start talking about the Ascension, and she visibly gets like a little creeped out when she starts talking about Ascension. And the priestess is like, "What the fuck was that? Why are you upset? Do you not want to ascend? Do you not want to be like a god? You are the maiden, the chosen." And she kind of like asks a question. She's like, "Well, like, what happens if I don't ascend?" And the priestess is like, "How dare you?" And she's like about to slap Poppy when immediately Hawk, who was like all the way across the room, runs and like grabs her hand. And this isn't even like a steam, but this is number one for me. And it was number one. And I said like hardcore touch her and die vibes, because it was a like, don't ever touch the maiden. And I was just like, oh my God. It was so hot. And Poppy thinks the same thing, because she's like, "I want to jump up and wrap myself around this man right now." Like, that's like one of the lines. And I was just like, yes, Poppy, you horny bitch. I love that. She's like, "Okay, I'm feeling things for Hawk. This is wrong. Whatever." The rite is the next night, and that is when the children are given over to the temples. It is like a few months before Ascension, so it starts off the like festival season, basically, of like or holy season, I guess is maybe what it would better be called. And because everything happens at night, during the day Poppy is super bored, and so she decides, okay, well, I need a book to read. Tawny's busy. She can't sneak me any books. So I'm just going to like slip out to the library. So she like puts on her cloak. She puts on her mask. She goes to the library, and she finds basically a diary of a woman that lived years ago called Willa Collins. And in it, every entry is a sexual escapade that this woman had. And so she's like, I guess I could read the diary of Willa Collins. And instead of taking this book back to her house, she immediately sits down and starts reading it. And she gets one chapter in, and she is blushing because Willa Collins is talking about a man with a rather large appendage who told her that she would not be able to walk the next day. And boy, was he right. And it's like all of this stuff. And I'm just laughing, but I'm like, why did you not go back? Because she doesn't realize the sun is setting. The sun has set. She starts to hear voices, and she realizes that it's the Duke's voice. And so the only place to hide is out the window on a ledge. And that is where she finds herself clutching this sex book in like a cloak, as she listens to the Duke and a guard meet in this room to talk about that dissenter that disrupted things earlier.
Listen, we've all been there. We've all read a smutty book too long, and then been out on a ledge holding on to it.
We've all been on a ledge.
We've all been out on a ledge.
They have this meeting. She kind of overhears the Duke talking about, doing something, and it doesn't sit right with her about how he's going to take care of the dissenter. And she thinks, shouldn't this guy have a trial? But it doesn't matter. He finally leaves, and she's like, okay, it's probably safe for me to leave. When all of a sudden she hears the door click open again, and who should find her but Hawk, who is like, I tracked you, get your ass in here, stop hanging out on a ledge. He like brings her in. They have this like banter where he's like, what's this book? And he kind of like sees it and starts reading things to her. And she's like, I'm the maiden. You shouldn't be talking about this stuff. And he's like, you're the one that's reading this book. It's a sex book. Let's talk about this. He like flips to a page where it's like, oh, look, a threesome. And she's like, stop. And it's like this whole moment, which I love. And after he teases her thoroughly, he's like, hey, we got to go. It's the night of the rite. So that night, she gets to wear a crimson dress, as everyone else does, but before she has only ever worn white, so this is a big deal. She doesn't have to have her veil. She just has another type of domino mask, and her hair is down and she gets makeup on and she realizes she feels like Poppy and she doesn't feel like the maiden. And Victor escorts her down to ballroom area where the rite's going to take place. She kind of like looks around for Hawk, but Victor is like, oh, he had to talk to the commander. Why are you worried about him? She's like, no reason. It's fine. And whatever. And he's like, maybe you shouldn't hang out with this boy so much. And she's like, Dad or Victor, like she's like, whatever. It's why she brushes it off. They're there. And she also notices the Duke is not present. It's just the Duchess up on stage, which is kind of weird. And as the rite is about to start, Agnes, the lady from earlier, whose husband they had to help die with dignity, finds them immediately. And he was like, I have to tell you something. She brings Victor and Poppy outside into the hallway. And she says, hey, I heard rumors that the Dark One is coming for you. So I just wanted you to know. And Victor's like, is there anything else you want to tell us? She's like, no, that's it. And she walks away. And they both
she didn't say Shadow Daddy is coming for you?
I heard the Shadow Daddy is coming for you. Just like
you.
A Shadow Daddy. I heard a Shadow Daddy. And Victor's like, got it. Look on the lookout for the SD. And they feel really odd about that. They go back in. The rite is basically ending. She kind of missed the whole ceremony, but it's about to be a party. And that's when Hawk shows up and she turns and he's in the royal garb of a sleeveless tunic, and she can see the muscles of his arms, and his breeches are a bit tighter, and his dark curly hair is perfectly tousled, and she's just getting fanny flutters hardcore. Hawk immediately looks at her and he's like, you look good. You look good. And Victor's like, watch it. And then Victor has to go talk to someone else. So he's like, okay, I got Poppy. And they leave the area, they go walking, and he's like, why don't we go out into the garden? Because you haven't been there since Rylan died. It used to be one of your favorite places. Let's go out there. They go, they walk, and he starts to tell her a little about himself. He tells her about his brother, who was one of his best friends, and how he lost him. She can feel waves of pain, radiating off of him. She quietly brushes, his hand with hers and takes his pain away, and he feels lighter. They keep
That's
walking. They're talking about themselves, and they see a huge weeping willow. And he goes, this is one of my favorite places. And they push back some of the branches, and they walk inside, and it's pitch black in there. She can't see a thing, but he somehow leads her to a bench. She's like, I can't sit on the bench. I can't see it. And he pulls her onto his lap. She's like, this is inappropriate. That's one of her favorite things to say, by the way. This is inappropriate, which I love because I say that all the time. He says he doesn't care. He doesn't care that she's the maiden. And she's like, this can't happen. He's like, we kissed once before, and I just want to kiss you again. I don't care if you're the maiden. This feels right. And he's like, and then don't you want this? And she's like, well, yeah, but it doesn't matter what I want. And he's like, of course it does. What you want, what matters to everyone, and da-da-da-da-da. And she's like, I've never heard that before. I've never been told that what I want matters. And in that moment, she's like, will you kiss me? And he's like, fuck yes. And they start hardcore making out in a scene, which I call number 2. How thick are those branches exactly? Because how is it pitch black under the branches of a willow tree enough that you can't really see, but they make out so hard? I don't even know how to describe it. She's like, I can't see anything, but I can feel him. She has to, she changes her position. He basically helps her, and he's like, I'm about to throw you down on this ground if we don't stop. And I'm like, this is the rite is happening. Aren't people around? I'm sure everyone's in the party, but there's got to be drunk people out in the garden making out as well, much like them. No one can see them. No one can hear them. Hardcore
willow
making
trees
out.
are impenetrable. It's like a grandmother willow situation from Pocahontas.
Fantasy.
Yeah, everyone knows that. A fantasy.
It's a fantasy tree. It's a fantasy.
Every single thing that annoys you about this book, fantasy.
It's not realistic. Anyway,
figure it out.
Yeah.
So he's like, I'm about to ravish you if we don't stop. And she's like, yeah, we gotta stop. I'm the maiden, period, the chosen. They walk hand in hand out of the garden back into the hallway where they see Victor. Victor walks up and he's like, the fuck? And he like looks at their hands. He looks at her and he's like, you are the maiden. What are you doing? And she's like, nothing happened. And he goes, you look thoroughly kissed. And she like looks at Hawk and his like, because she was wearing makeup. So there's like a bit of red, like both of their lips are swollen. She's flushed because she has like this long red hair and pale skin. And she's like, nothing happened. And Hawk is like, she thinks of you like a father, so I'm not going to do anything, but watch it. And basically he's like, Victor's like, you're dismissed. And Hawk like, walks away. And he's like, oh my God, what the fuck, Poppy? And Poppy kind of tries to explain to him, and she realizes that she wants to be found unworthy of ascension because she barely has any life right now, and what little life that she has now is going to be taken away from her when she ascends, and she feels trapped and all this stuff. And she finally kind of lets this all out to Victor, who's just standing there like shocked. But as this like father figure in her life, he's very much like, it's okay. He goes, I'm going to take you back to your room. Let's talk. As they start heading back to the room, they have to walk past the big ballroom where the party is happening. And as they do, they hear blood-curdling screams. And a woman, like backwards, stumbles out, tears on her face, like hands covering her mouth. And they're like, uh-oh. And she goes, oh my God, Tawny is in there. We have to go in there. They both run in and they realize that one of the banners that was up to decorate for the rite has fallen down, and with it has fallen the body of the Duke, who has been stabbed with a cane, and on him in blood is written, from blood and ash we shall rise, which is the motto of the dissenters. And so she's in complete shock. Tawny runs up to them. They're like, oh my God. Poppy's like, do you think he was up there the whole time? They're gonna need like a ladder to get him down. And Tawny's like, the fuck? And she's like, he's dead. And Tawny's like, okay, we gotta get out of here. And as they're about to leave to like turn and run, they hear glass starting to be shattered. All of the windows that were outside or like facing the outside are being shattered. People are being pelted and like struck with glass. They see one of the girls who was fawning over Hawk earlier go down. She has glass sticking out of her eye. She is like immediately dead. And mass chaos ensues as dissenters start to shoot arrows through the windows into this party. Victor immediately is like, he pushes both Tawny and Poppy against the Duchess. Guards surround them. They're like, we got to get them out of here. And again, even more mass chaos happens as bodies are running into them. The guards are squishing them. They can barely breathe. A sea of people come around there. They're running. They all get separated. Poppy goes down. She gets stepped on. She somehow makes it to the side. She reunites with Tawny and Victor, and the three of them run into this room where the Duchess and Lord Mazine are, and they are kind of in this like a drawing room, and the Duchess is like, no, we're staying here. Poppy and Victor are like, we are sitting ducks. What are you doing? Like, it's them with a handful of guards, and that's it. He goes, no, the Ascended will take care of this. We're going to stay here until it's over. And they're all like, okay. And, Victor kind of leans over. He goes, do you have your dagger? And Poppy's like, yeah. And he's like, if anyone comes in, you use it. I don't care who sees. Clearly she wasn't supposed to be taught any of this. She's supposed to be a demure maiden. He's like, no, you protect yourself. And just like they knew was going to happen, the door starts being pounded on. The bad guys are starting to like cut through the door, and they finally burst through, killing two of the guards instantly. Victor draws his sword. He is cutting people down left and right. Poppy immediately like lifts up her skirts. The Lord Mazine's like, oh, look at that, and her thigh. And she's like, fuck off, and like takes out her dagger, starts like killing dissenters left and right. They kill the last of the people. Victor's like, I taught her that, and I'm so proud of her. And as he's like looking at her with pride, another dissenter runs into the room. And before anyone can do anything, he's so fast. He immediately stabs Victor with a sword through, like from the back through his chest. and Poppy can't, she's just in shock. Victor's sword falls down. She falls down with him. She's trying to hold him. She's freaking out. And as this dissenter who just stabbed Victor, like, comes back to stab her, who should run in but Hawk with the rest of the guard. And he, beheads this dissenter. And, he's like, it's okay, it's okay. And she's so upset. She's so emotional that she cannot take Victor's pain away as he lay there dying. And he says, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I couldn't, I hope you forgive me. And she's like, of course you can't die. And then he goes, and she is inconsolable. She is screaming at Hawk to help her, to fix this, to do anything. And then she hears Lord Mazine be like, oh, the maiden got too close with her guard. Sucks to suck. And is like a piece of shit. And she immediately looks up, and he goes, guess he didn't teach you well enough. And she grabs Victor's sword and runs at this ascended lord and immediately cuts off his arm. And he is so in shock and falls back, and then she quickly cuts off his other hand.
Yeah.
And then does a twirl and just beheads him. And
Yay!
Duchess is sitting
I
there
don't think it's that easy.
yay, beheading!
I don't think any of those things are that easy to cut off.
No,
they're not.
no,
but it's a
no.
fantasy.
It's fantasy.
It's fantasy.
And she has all this, she's in a rage. She's in a rage, and she cannot stop herself. Tawny is screaming at her to calm down. The Duchess is in shock. Hawk is the only one. He grabs her from behind, and he basically has to use a pressure point on her neck because she is just screaming. A guttural sound is coming out of her as she tries to hack this lord to bits. And I was just like, what a good scene. So sad, but what a good scene.
Yeah.
And he's a piece of shit. And for a week she's basically in and out. She misses Victor's funeral because she's passed out. Her throat is shredded from the screaming. It's all this stuff. And she's like, okay, well, I'm gonna get in trouble for killing an Ascended. She gets called to the Duchess's chambers, and she's like, it's a shame that he had to die, but I guess he did. You're not in trouble, but you're going back to Carcedonia. The king and queen have heard about what happened, and they want you near them. And she's like, okay, sounds good. She's like, all right, Tawny's coming with me. And they go, no, this is a covert operation. You're going with Hawk and a handful of guards, and that's it. And she puts up a fight. Tawny's like, I can't go. We're not staying in inns. You're going to be sleeping on the ground, and you're going to be left and right, and people are there to defend you, not me. And, this isn't going to go well for me, but I'll follow you later. And she's realizing, okay, Victor's not here anymore. Tawny can't come. The only person I know or trust right now is Hawk. And this is scary, and everything's changing. But the next morning at dawn, without the veil, because that would be too identifiable, her and a handful of guards get on horseback, and they leave. And she realizes she hasn't felt the sun on her face in years, and it's kind of freeing, and it's wonderful. And she's on horseback. She has to ride with Hawk because she doesn't know how to ride a horse. And she realizes how inappropriate it is because she has to sit in front of him, and the horse is just they're bouncing, and she kind of has to lean further and further back, and his arms are around her, and she's like, is it bad that I like this so much, but also my butt hurts from riding, but oh my gosh. And as they ride, she learns they have to pass through the barrens, this very barren land. They have to go through the blood forest, and when they get there, they have to start slowing down because they're worried they will run into barrets, which are rodents the size of a boar with jagged teeth. What I picture as the ROUSs, rodents of unusual sizes from Princess Bride, but even scarier, faster, and worse. That night, they have to spend the night in the blood forest. It's terrifying to her, and it's freezing. And Hawk lays next to her, and she is so cold. And she goes, what do you think? She says, this is inappropriate. And he's like, I know you have nightmares. I know you're going to scream, and we can't alert any craven to us. And you're also shivering so hard that I can hear your teeth. So I'm going to lay next to you, and I'm just going to, help you get to sleep. And she's really tense. And he goes, I think I could probably help you like untense yourself if you want. She's like, oh, sure. And he proceeds to like, okay, I thought he was fingering her, but it's over the pants rubbing. But basically, so I called it at first, number 3. His fingers would have been freezing. Because if it's that cold and you get fingered, I'm like, no, I don't want that. But I realized it's through the britches, because then he talks about, he's like, imagine if my hand was in your pants and we were doing this. But so she basically,
I don't think that counts.
I don't think it counts.
But she's never been like touched. Like, you know what I mean? So
that's fair.
So this is a lot for her. But
fine. But yeah, it doesn't count. Melanie's right.
All I can think of was how cold those fingers would have been.
Well, my husband told me about the scene, and when he did, I was like, wait, just fingers? Like, what? No. Like,
and it's not even fingers. It's the hint of a finger. But
the scraping of fingers on trousers. That's
on trousers. But she basically like comes, and she's able to like fall asleep. And the next morning, they're riding, and you know, it starts to get quiet, and she's like, what the fuck? And out of nowhere, a Barrett comes, and it jumps on Noah, one of the guards. He manages to fight it off. Someone stabs it, and they hear the scurry of the horde of Barretts, and they are about to like ready themselves to fight when they realize that all these Barretts start running past them. And behind the Barretts is a mist, and they go, oh my God, the Craven are coming. We're in the Blood Forest. We're going to have to fight them. Hawk is like, you know what to do. You're going to have to fight as well. She's like, got it. They all get off their horses, and they're ready to fight. The Craven come out of nowhere, and there's this big fight scene. All the guards are killing it. They're doing great. And since they're in the Blood Forest, there are all these gnarled roots. And as Poppy is killing yet another Craven, she trips and she starts to fall. And one of the Craven is about to jump on her when a young guard, Eric, dives and saves her, stabbing the Craven and going under the mist with it. And she continues the fight. Soon the Craven are gone. They're all dead. But she realizes that Eric has been fatally bitten by one of them. And she immediately goes over to him. She's surrounded by the guards and Eric. She holds his hand and takes away his pain. And he goes, I recognize you. You're the person I played cards with in the beginning of this. You know, I played cards with you at the Red Pearl. Like, you're so beautiful. You know, thank you, da da da. And she gets really emotional. And he peacefully goes off to his death. But Hawk and the other guards are like, oh my God, it's the gift of the gods. Like, we all knew it. Da 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 da. So she starts freaking out because she's like, okay, Hawk is like not talking to me. I must have like scared him with my gift. And they arrive at New Haven. We're at the end of what I'm going to say, by the way. So they arrive at New Haven, a town, and things seem kind of off. The Lord and Lady, the Ascended, don't come out and greet her. Nothing happens, but everyone, the townspeople seem to be greeting them. They get a room. She's able to like eat and have a bath and all this stuff. And she kind of waits up until Hawk comes into her room, and they start talking about the gift, about how she can feel people's emotions sometimes without trying, how she can take away someone's pain. He tells her how incredible she is, and how he knows that she took away his pain at that one time when they were talking about his brother, how it's sad that she's been made to feel like this is something she has to hide when it's something so wonderful and it helps people. And as he's saying that, she's like, will you stay with me tonight? And he's like, if I stay with you, you're not going to be a maiden anymore. And she's like, I know. And so they do it in number 4, which I call, this was clearly written by a woman, because like, it is the most like, not lovely scene, but it's like, okay, she undresses, he compliments her body, and she's not like a skinny person, but she's not fat, but like, he says how beautiful she is. He rains kisses all over her. He fingers her, then he eats her out, and he compliments her. And like they have sex, and it doesn't really hurt that much, but like kind of does. But he's gentle, and it's like this whole thing that I was like, this is such a woman. Like, I wish this is how I lost my virginity, kind of thing. And I wasn't mad about it, but I was just like, that's a nice sex scene. It was good.
Yeah, it's a lovely little.
It's a lovely little sex scene, and so She drifts off to sleep. They both drift off to sleep in each other's arms.
Cute.
She wakes up later in the night as he's getting up to leave because he has to go take care of something. And she goes, okay. She ends up getting up too, and she dresses because she's like, it's dawn. We're probably going to have to leave soon. One of the guards, Phillips, comes to the door, and he knocks, and he goes, there's something not right. I haven't seen two of the other guards. Another two of the guards and me stayed together, and something doesn't feel right here. We haven't seen any ascended people. We're going to ready the horses, and we're going to go. And she's like, okay, well, let's talk to Hawk. And he goes, no, you don't understand. Kieran and Hawk, no one knew of them before this, these last couple of months. Like, they came out of nowhere. Like, Kieran seems to know people around here. We don't trust him. And he's like starting to get more erratic as he's saying this. And she's like, okay, well, he seems a little unstable. I got to find Hawk and like tell him that this is happening. But this guy Phillips has his sword. Like, I'm gonna play along. So she goes, okay, yeah, let's go to the stables. And as they leave the room, they run into Kieran, who's like, what are you guys doing? And Phillips, there's like a tense moment, and then Phillips stabs Kieran. And it's not a fatal blow, but it's something like around the, the side. And Kieran kind of looks up and he goes, you shouldn't have done that. And he begins to change. Kieran's skin seems to thin and darken. His jaw elongates. Bones crack and reform, and fur like pops out everywhere. And this huge creature on all fours that she thought was extinct, a wolven, now stands before her. She is freaking the fuck out, and so is Phillips. They run as fast as they can out of this like grand house into the barn where the other two are getting their horses ready. She is adamant. She's like, no, you were right about Kieran, but not about Hawk. We've got to find him. I'm not leaving without Hawk. She goes, where is he? So we have to find him. And she hears the words, I know where he is. And she turns, and out of the shadows, the big shaggy man who tried to kidnap her in the beginning of the book steps out from the shadows of the barn saying, I know where Hawk is. And that's where I'm going to end it.
Damn, girl.
We don't know where Hawk is. Kieran's a wolven. Craven are everywhere. The Ascended are nowhere to be seen.
What could be happening? Could it be that the man who gave her first orgasms isn't all he seems?
Quiet. We don't know. We don't know.
Could it be the man who ate her pussy real good? Maybe also
he could be dead. He could be dead for all we know.
Flynn couldn't possibly be a fake name. It's too realistic.
No, it makes too much sense.
Well, so having heard that, there are definitely like elements of fantasy in there. The second book, I think, has more. And where I stopped reading, that was at like 80-85% of the way through. The rest of the book has a huge info dump of just all fantasy stuff. The little game we're going to play is Who Would You Cast? And we're going to go Poppy, Hawk, Victor, and Tawny. So Poppy.
That's too many. I don't have that in my brain.
We're going to go Poppy, Hawk, Victor.
Thank you.
I took one person away.
Victor is Jorah Mormont. We already established that.
Yeah, I agree with that casting. Poppy has like long red hair. She's like muscular, not skinny, not fat. She has like a scar. I think she's a little more on the petite side. Like she's probably between 5'3" and 5'6", maybe. And Hawk is like a tall, lean, dark, curlyish hair, olivey skin. He has golden eyes. Probably smells like pine.
Melanie, do you have somebody? Because I think I have somebody for Poppy.
For Poppy, well, she's skinny, but I can't really think of many actresses who aren't. The redhead from like Riverdale. She in Riverdale?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know her full. I don't know her name, but
hair, really petite.
Yeah,
kind of sassy looking.
I could see that.
I love that. I pictured also Game of Thrones, but not Sansa. The wildling.
Oh, Ygritte.
Yeah, her.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Flynn, I can't picture dudes. They all look like the same generic tall, muscular man with dark hair to me. So I got nothing for Flynn.
I think he should be played by the animated character Flynn Rider from Tangled.
Yes.
All the Flynns together in like one package.
Yeah.
Oh my god. And then Merida could be. We could just do.
It's Flynn and Merida. Yes.
Merida is Poppy.
Merida is Poppy. I feel like that is
Merida
actually like who that
She's an
was.
archer.
Well,
Yeah.
that was from Blood and Ash. That was
Damn
that.
girl. That was a lift, and you
I
sure
know.
did tell it to us. So now we're gonna get into the fanfic of it all. I did have a bit of I did have a bit of a thing because usually my rule is to not pick a fanfic that relates in canon to the trope that we're doing. But in this case, I was like, I don't want to have to explain an entire world. So I am
Like I did.
I didn't want to do that. So I I picked a fantasy series and fan fiction that has spun off from it. And actually, it's a piece of fan fiction that takes the original series and continues it on with some adjustments. So I've actually read this one a couple of times, and so when I finally remembered it, it was like, yes. So, have either of you read the Shadow and Bone trilogy?
No, but I watched the show.
I was
Okay,
gonna say
so did I.
no. I've seen
Cheated.
some of the show. I have not finished it, but I think I know what happens.
It's a great
We're
show,
all on
but
the
they
same
canceled
page.
it, which is upsetting.
Yeah, I heard they canceled it. But also it was Shadow and Bone and Six of Crows. It was basically both of them in the series, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And so Shadow and Bone is all the stuff that you're seeing that's like Alina and the Darkling and all of that, like Nikolai, the Prince, like that is all Shadow and Bone. And then Six of Crows was kind of more the heist movie going on in the first season. And so we're all on the same page because I haven't read it either, but I've seen the show. But it has so much fan fiction that I have read a lot of the fan fiction and just switch whether it's based on the TV show or the book, and it doesn't really matter that much. But yeah, so Shadow and Bone is a 3-book. The Shadow and Bone trilogy is 3 books. It's Shadow and Bone, Siege and Storm, Ruin and Rising, and there's about 10,000 fanfics under the tag for the TV show. So there's actually more fanfic for the TV show than there is for the book series. And we are going to get into big, what were we calling it? Shadow Daddy energy today.
Oh,
that makes sense.
As soon as you said that, I was like, Ben Barnes, Ben Barnes.
Yes. He is the Shadow Daddy.
He is literally the Shadow Daddy
in
this series. So no surprise to anyone, the Darkling and Alina is the biggest fanfic pairing for this series. There's almost 4,000 fics with them, and a lot of them are what we call fix-it fics, where the writer objects to something about the way that their favorite pairing was handled, and they have decided they're going to write their own version, or they're going to write some offshoot or whatever. But before we get there, so in the original books, the Darkling is the dark figure that teaches Elena, the orphan, who has light powers, about her powers, and like tempts her to the dark side, and only the two of them can understand each other as powerful beings of light and dark, etc., etc. We all have heard this before. Spoiler alert for Shadow and Bone, but if you've seen the show, you know most of this. In the book series, she kills the Darkling.
Okay.
Yeah, I know, sad.
I'm sad, but okay.
Yeah, and most of the fans of the Darkling and Alina as a pairing did not agree with that choice, because she's like in canon, she stabs the Darkling, he dies. Her and Mal, who's like her best friend, who's that normal regular guy that just kind of, is a cartographer.
Boo.
They end up going back to the orphanage they were both raised in and running it, and that's their life. Which, fine,
really,
great.
That's how the whole thing ends? I mean, because the show doesn't get that far.
The show doesn't get quite that far, yeah. But yeah, the Darkling dies.
Is it romantic with them when they run the orphanage, or just as friends?
They're together. They end up together.
Boo.
Mal and Alina end up together. And there's big like Ron Weasley hating energy when it comes to dark. Like Mal is the Ron Weasley of this fiction.
Of the Draco Hermione. Okay.
I like rooted for him in the show, because I guess the show made me like him, and
Yeah.
But at the same time, they got together, and then it was so anticlimactic, and then you're kind of like, okay.
Yeah, it was very it was very I mean, it was very comfortable, it was very best friendy, like just very sweet, which like yeah, but there's so much more, I think, like chemistry and drama and all of that with the Darkling, and there's that whole element of only these two can understand each other. And they also have something, and I don't remember if this was in the TV series, but they have something in the book where they are each other's tethers, so they can mentally appear to each other without actually being there. Kind of like in the
Mal
latest,
or the dark one? Or
the
the
Darkling
darkling?
and Alina.
Shadow
Got it.
Daddy,
Okay.
yeah.
Shadow Daddy and Alina.
Shadow Daddy or Mal?
Remember his
Yeah.
name.
So it's like in the latest, in the Star Wars ones,
Yes.
with
Kylo Ren.
Rey and Kylo Ren, where they can like see each other through the Force and communicate without being actually near each other. And so in the canon, and this is all going to make sense why I'm telling you this when we get to the fic, but in the canon, basically, like right before the Darkling dies, he's like pleading with Alina and saying like, I thought that you could be my balance. I thought that we could balance each other, and I could be a better man because I was with you. And she was like, but you could make me a monster. And he's like, but we can be on a throne together and we can rule together. And he tells Alina his real name, Alexander, where everyone else knows him as the Darkling. And she comments on how common it is. And then when she loses her power in the final battle of the Fold, which is I think an element of the TV series, he like panics because he thinks he's lost the only other person in the world that had power like his, that could understand his power. And while he's distracted and panicking, that's when she kills him. Yeah. And then she ends up with Mal, but she cries over his body. She obeys his like burial request. Like he basically says, don't let me have a grave that people can desecrate, like burn me and scatter me, basically. And as he burns on the pyre, she whispers his true name, Alexander, above it and says goodbye to him, which to me is far more romantic than going off and running an orphanage with your childhood best friend. But what do I know?
She's like
What'd you say?
special and chosen, and then it's like, yeah. It's weird.
She just
and
doesn't
Yeah.
do anything with it. Like
really
she's just
mundane life.
She just goes off to her mundane life. And you could argue that the whole series is basically about power and the way power corrupts. Like that's like the whole message of the Darkling, is like he creates that what's it called? The Fold, because he oversteps his power and because he's power hungry. And so you could read it as like the message of the whole series is like power corrupts absolutely, so just go run an orphanage with your best friend. But I don't like it.
so just go run an orphanage, whatever.
Not as sexy.
Not as sexy as Shadow Daddy.
No, it's Shadow Daddy for the win. So we're gonna picture Ben Barnes the whole time. So this fic is called Start a War, by nymja, nymja. I hope I'm saying that username right. And I'm just going to read the author's note because it just summarizes everything. I love the book, but I'm sure I'm not the only one who wanted things to go more Darkling. So here's an alternative ending where Alina's final amplifier doesn't work out as planned. Yes to stabbing the Darkling and Mal dying. No to Mal reviving, or the Darkling dying, or Alina losing her power. I took lots of inspiration from The Death of Cochet the Deathless and Deathless by Catherine Valenti. So
Okay.
the other reason I picked this is I think that a big part of fantasy is the writing. I think fantasy writers are usually really good writers, Melanie, because you have to be able to keep a world straight in order to like read it well, and I think in order to do that you have to be a decent enough writer. And I just think that this fic is beautiful. I think it's beautifully written. It is like a fix-it and it is a fanfic, but I just think it's gorgeous. So I'm going to start telling you about it by quoting the first couple lines of this fic. We start right after the end of the First War. So picture like the Darkling has been stabbed, Mal has died, Alina has been basically taken back to the palace by Nikolai, the blonde prince, who actually isn't evil in a weird thing. Is just like a nice guy.
Breaking the trope.
Yeah.
So we should fanfic that.
Yeah, I know, right? Make Nikolai evil. Let's just dig into that trope.
Let's make that a hashtag. Let's get that trending. Make Nikolai evil.
Make Nikolai evil. Yeah, that was the thing in the series. I liked him against my will. Like, I was so ready because I love Alina and Darkling as a pairing, and I was so ready to be like, fuck you, Nikolai. But he was really sweet and a cool character. Anyway, quote, when Alina Starkov, who becomes Sancta Alina, who becomes Tsaritsa Lantsov, who becomes the new Morozova, who becomes Sancta once again, thinks upon their first ending, it is made of pieces. It is made of shattered things, like mirrored discs forged by someone she had once called her friend. The edges are too rough to ever tell the complete truth, but they are enough to hold the reflections of people she knew she must have loved. I just think it's really good writing. So, like I said, Mal has died. Alina is mourning because she has lost her dearest friend in the entire world. And the way that they write it is she's wearing her grief like armor. Like, nobody can get to her. And Alina is immortal, just like the Darkling. And so for her, years are almost nothing. And so it takes 3 years of her being in mourning before she can start to come back to herself and feel like she can kind of move on from the loss of Mal. And the people have started to call her Sancta, which is saint, because she killed the Darkling and she defeated the evil. But she knows in the back of her mind that they never found a body. And she knows that she can still sometimes feel a whisper every now and again on her tether, and she's not really necessarily sure what it is, but she also in the back of her head is like, I don't think the Darkling is actually gone. But she's been so busy grieving that she just doesn't even have time to she doesn't give a shit. She's like, fine, be out there, I'm dealing with my own feelings. And the Darkling does reach out to her every night on their tether, but finds that all he reaches is just a wall of grief and can't really get through it all. And while she's trying to come back to herself, Nikolai proposes 5, 6, 7 different times. And she keeps saying no. She keeps saying, I'm not ready. I don't really feel like I can be the queen of the realm with you, like, because he's now the king. I don't feel like I'm the right person for that. Until finally, after she comes out of her grief, she starts to think about, like, actually, maybe I could do a lot of good as the queen. Maybe I could help right some of the wrongs of the war. And so the 8th time Nikolai proposes, she does say yes.
8 times the charm. 8 times the charm.
8 times the charm. Fellas, no, don't do that. Please, God, in real life, do not ever propose to someone 8 times.
No, that's called a restraining order in real life.
It's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah. So the first time that Alina and Alexander, who is the Darkling, and I will be using those things interchangeably, Darkling equals Alexander.
Equals Shadow Daddy.
Equals Shadow Daddy. The first time Alina and Shadow Daddy speak to each other after she stabs him to death is at her wedding.
Ooh.
Yes. So her wedding is this huge affair. The author has an author's note at the beginning of this chapter saying that she watched footage of Tsar Nicholas, like the last Romanov family, his marriage to, I don't remember her name. The author watched footage of that, like, giant Russian wedding as inspiration for this wedding. So it's like a parade that, like, is miles long, and Alina's in a carriage drawn by white horses, and she gets to, like, the end of the thing, and it's like a kilometer that she has to walk to get to the chapel. And the entire time, she's just thinking, I fucking hate this. I really wish we didn't have to do this. This is way too much. I wish that we could have just gone in our common clothes and seen an officiant and just made this official. Courthouse, whatever this world's version of a courthouse wedding is. I wish we could have done that. But she's like, I know that my husband loves his show. So she marries him. She's comforted because when she comes up the aisle, Nikolai looks at her like she's the only one in the room and like squeezes her hand, is like, I know you hate this, but it's gonna be okay. And then they do like the 3-hour Russian Orthodox ceremony.
Does he love her, or is this more of a like power play for him too?
He loves her.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, there's like in the books there's more of a flirtation between the two of them, but I feel like it's portrayed as being kind of very one-sided. And so I think the author for this fanfic decided like, well, he would keep trying if Mal was dead and she was there, so this makes some level of sense. And so she starts to get a sense at their wedding, like, this is a good friend to me. I may not be in love with him because she's not. She kind of married him because she wanted to move on. She wanted the power, and he's her friend. But she's like, I think at the very least we will be good partners to each other. But then later at the reception, she starts to feel that pull at the back of her mind again, and she's dancing the night away. But she doesn't notice that every single new dance partner brings her closer and closer to the edge of the ballroom until suddenly she's like dancing by a corridor, and a hand reaches out and grabs her and pulls her into a corridor. And the Darkling says, Tsaritsa? And she stares up into gray eyes that she's not looked at in years. And she knows that he's not really there, but she's still kind of freaked out, but also a little happy to see him. And so they're like dancing, because we got to be dramatic about this. So they're dancing in a dark corridor.
I'm picturing like the labyrinth, like when it's the dream sequence dance. Okay, cool.
Yes, but imagine they're like in a side room.
Yeah.
You know?
Or like in Pride and Prejudice when it's just them dancing.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And he says, she's like, are you here for revenge? Like, are you here to kill people? And he says, maybe I've just missed you. Have you ever considered that? And she says, no, I haven't. What are you doing here? And he starts to argue with her when they're still dancing. And he goes, I need to remind you that your husband is mortal and will always leave you. Mortals will always leave you. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, we will have decades together, and that's worth it. And he says, you and I will have centuries. Like, mortals mean nothing to us. And he says, I don't mind waiting for you. And she says, are you going to hurt me? Are you going to hurt my new husband? And he says, I don't need to hurt your new husband. Time will do what I want to do anyway. It's better for me. It's better for me and for you to learn this lesson about your new husband. And with that, he leaves her. And he's like, I can be patient. And then he like disappears. He just disappears into dust or something like that.
I like a patient man. I like a man who knows what he wants and is patient.
The Darkling is patient. Shadow Daddy is patient. And so over the following years, Nikolai and Alina become a team, and he really focuses on trade and the sea and the things that he used to do, and she focuses on the army and training the Grisha, which is the word for like the magic wielders in this world. And so every night in bed, Nikolai rolls over and says, are you hopelessly in love with me yet? And every single time she's like, no. But
that's awkward.
It's a little awkward.
Not yet.
But over time, her protests kind of get softer and softer and softer and softer. And
are they like doing it in the meantime, or
no?
Oh, okay.
Ooh, a sexless marriage.
Sexless marriage. They do adopt a child who is in the books as like kind of an orphan servant person. So Misha, they adopt Misha. And then on their second wedding anniversary, which is the first time they bang, it's because Nikolai blindfolds her and takes her to the orphanage where she grew up that had been destroyed during the war, and he has restored it. Yeah, and he's like, this is for you to do with whatever you'd like. And she cries because she thought that it was gone forever, and she makes it an orphanage again, but she doesn't spend the rest of her life there. She just makes it an orphanage.
Just a place for the orphans to go. Next.
Ugh. And so that's when they bang, because that's the fastest way to anybody's heart.
Do they bang? They don't bang at the orphanage, right? They bang later on. Okay, I just didn't want this to be weird. Okay, cool. Go on.
They're okay. They're adults about this, and they go home.
They go to
their
a bed.
own beds.
Got it.
But later that year, she has her daughter Anna, and that's the next time. The next time the Darkling visits her, Anna is in her crib, and Alina's like in the rocking chair, just kind of like watching her daughter. And the Darkling appears, and she says, "Why are you here again?" And he says, "Because I missed you. I keep telling you that." And he's just staring at Alina's daughter, and she knows at this point that he's not trying to hurt her necessarily or hurt her family. And she just says, like, "Have you ever had children?" And he says, "I would never be so thoughtless to have children. Like, how much are you willing to lose? Like, you will lose your children. Like, why are you doing this to yourself?" And she doesn't have an answer for him, and he disappears. And so time passes. Anna is 6 years old. Misha has joined their army, and Alina has built up the army. So it's magic users and non-magic users fighting together, which never used to happen before. And she's very proud of it. And Alina had always held out hope that her daughter Anna would show her powers and like be a sun summoner like Alina is. But then she starts to show other types of powers. She starts to show seafaring powers, and Alina finally has to come to terms with the fact that her daughter is mortal. And she just keeps remembering Alexander saying, like, there are only two of us. There will only ever be the two of us. And after another 10 years go by, she notices her friends are growing older. She starts to kind of see wrinkles where she didn't see them before, and she starts to have her friend how do you say it, Genya, the redhead from the show, who could change people's appearances. She starts to have her add wrinkles to her face, so it looks like she's aging, but in reality Alina is still exactly the same as she's always been. And so time keeps passing. Her children have children. She's a grandmother. They have their own lives. Her husband, Nikolai, still rolls over every single night and says, "Are you madly in love with me yet?" And she now rolls her eyes and kisses him on the forehead. But his hands have wrinkles now, and he's developed a cough. And she, one night, he kisses her knuckles and says, "So are you hopelessly in love with me yet?" And she says, "Of course I am, you fool." And she cries in his arms. And then a few days later, he passes away. And that's the first big loss after the Darkling. And she has been grieving Nikolai for many, many months when Alexander comes to her again and says, "They're starting to whisper about you. People have started to notice that you've never gone to the doctor, that you've not left your quarters for even food since your husband died. People are saying that you still look young. Like you're going to be found out soon, and people are going to get suspicious of you, and that's dangerous. You need to figure out what you're going to do. Like, you're being careless." And he says, "You can come with me. Like, run away with me. We can hide together." And you get like a quick POV. All of this has been from Alina's perspective. You get like a quick Darkling flash of just like how desperate he is and how long he's waited for Alina to run away with him. And he's like, "Please just come be immortal with me. It'll be great."
So no one knew that she was immortal, though?
People know that are like in her immediate family that she's very, very powerful, but they've seen her with wrinkles. They've seen her aging for decades now. And the people that remember her are either dying or dead. Because almost 60 years have passed. And so the world is starting to kind of forget, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
and so that's what the Darkling is like. Your power is something that people will be afraid of, and if you remind them of it, you're putting yourself at risk. And so he asked her to come with him. She says not tonight, and then is mad at herself for like the slip up, because that wasn't a never. That wasn't a I'll never come with you. That was I won't come with you right now. And he's like a little bit like, oh, okay, interesting. And so she tells her her son Misha, who's now the king, she tells him like, hey, I need to go. Like it's time for me to find a new life. And they stage her death. They figure out a way to stage her death. And she dresses up as like an old servant woman and like hobbles on out of the palace. And 90 years pass and people start to forget that she was a real person. Like people tell stories about the Fold and the Darkling and the Saint of Light that defeated them. But everyone has started to forget that this was reality and it's all just the stuff of legend. And 90 years later, a young man with dark hair and dark eyes, very real shadow daddy energy, if you will, is seen in an army camp bending shadows around his hands. And because the Darkling has decided it's time to come back. And now we get his POV, and his whole POV is like, I've done this a million fucking times. I'm going to wait it out. I'm going to take power. I'm going to manipulate people. I'm going to hide. I'm going to pretend that I don't know how powerful I am so that people feel secure with me. And then I'm going to make my move. And his whole motivation, which is the same motivation that he had in the books of the show, is to elevate magic users to be the number ones. And he has like a great disdain for the people that aren't magic users because, you know, he's kind of an asshole. But also he has been like horribly kind of abused by those people, and he just never wants the magic users to be back into like slavery again, because that was kind of what they were like used as servants basically for their powers for a really
as
long
of
time.
this point they're like it's equal, right?
Right now
they
it is
work
equal.
in tandem. Okay.
Because Alina and Nikolai made it so. Like they were the ones that implemented a system, because that was like her great dream.
Yeah.
That they would all be on equal footing.
Okay, cool.
But the Darkling disagrees. And so he falls back into like being in the army. His commander, when he sees him like bending shadows, is like, people are really spooked. They've only heard about people being able to do this from like the old legends and the old stories about this really evil guy named the Darkling. Have you heard of him? And the Darkling's like, oh my god, really? Wow, what an evil guy. I'm not that guy. I just have the same powers. Like, that would be crazy.
He goes by the Dark One, not the Darkling,
I'm
so
the
it's
Dark
fine.
One. He's like, my name's just Alexander. I'm just little old Alexander. I don't know.
Alling, Darkling, what?
I'm just Al Darkling Xander.
Can I just say something really quick?
Yeah.
There was the spinoff of Saved by the Bell, like the reboot of it. There is it is no longer, it got canceled, but I will never forget this joke that it's like one of the last episodes. And it's somebody from another school comes in, and the guy who's supposed to be like the Zach Morris, goes up to the girl and he's like, what did I always tell you? And she goes, whenever I meet someone, always rearrange the letters in their name in case like they're using a fake name. Like, yeah, he's like, every time you meet someone, always rearrange the letters. So now I'm just thinking he's like rearranged the letters.
It's like a
Zach Morris was right.
It's a Tom or Riddle.
Yes,
yeah,
I am more. Yes. Always rearrange the
like
letters.
It's
like
honestly,
the dumbest joke.
I wish that this writer had taken the time. I mean, she was
To
doing
do that.
a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would have been hilarious. So he kind of and again, like the thing that I really liked about this fic is they're very like 8 years later, 9 years later, 10 years later, like a lot of time is passing. So 7 years later is the first time that Alexander sees Alina again, and she's using the tether, has appeared before him at his fireplace. And he just comes up behind her and like holds her and puts his chin on her shoulder, and they just like stare into the fire together. And he just says, "Where are you?" And she says, I'm traveling until I can't anymore. And he says, you should like stay with me, at least stay with me tonight, like spend the night with me. And she's like, I'm not real. I'm not actually here. And he says, you don't need to be real. Like, we know that it's real to us. And he like kisses her neck and is trying to like get her to stay. And she says, don't make me come back, Alexander. I know what you're doing. And disappears. And he decides at that moment that it is time to make her come back because he wants to see her.
Well, duh.
And so he finally gets control of the armies that he's been a member of for almost 2 decades now, right as war breaks out on the border of the country of Ravka. And then 2 weeks later, in the big main battle of the the first battle of this war, he basically slaughters the enemy with his shadow powers and like splits the earth in two, and everyone's swallowed up by darkness, and everyone is shook but happy that they won the war, so no one's like, you know, too mad about it. Like, no one's arresting him. The queen's really happy, and the queen is like Alina's great granddaughter at this point.
Okay.
And after that battle, after he started to gain this notoriety, Alina comes back to him again, and she's so pissed off. And she's like, okay, I understand. I have to stop you. I'm coming back to stop you. And he starts to see Alina like popping around the camp, and he's like, oh my God, like her tether, she keeps just like checking in on things and trying to freak me out, because he'll just be like eating dinner and she'll be like across the room staring at him, until he realizes that actually she's real, because he sees her and is like, I've had enough of this, and marches over to her to try to be like, please stop tethering into my war camp, and like goes to grab her shoulder, and it doesn't feel like the tether. It's like, oh no, that is your real shoulder. And he finds out that she's been there for 9 months under his nose, and he's just been thinking the entire time that it's in his brain. And so she's like, I'm here because I need to stop you, and I don't know yet how I'm going to stop you, but you said when you were dying that I was your balance, and I'm here to be that balance. And she says, I won't let you cause another fold. And he kisses the back of her hand and says, I'd like to see you try, and then leaves. And now this starts, she now just is popping up, but now she can yell at him because he knows she's real. So she now starts popping up at night, and while he's going over like plans, like going over maps and going, you shouldn't go there, you should go there, you should go there. Oh, I wouldn't do that, I would send so-and-so here. And she starts to basically like advise him and try to influence him in that way. And he lets her because he loves her and wants her around. So after like a year of this and them kind of dancing around each other, they're out scouting and they're ambushed, and he gets shot 3 times. And on that day, he is officially killed. Like the official record states that he has been killed in active duty. And the story is that the commander of the Ravkan army sacrificed his life, and a saint was so moved that she wrapped the battlefield in light in order to save him, because there was a huge blast of light and then he was gone. And yeah, interesting. And so when he wakes up, he has no idea where he is, but he's been horribly injured and he's recovering. And he says, you saved me. And she, with a horrified look on her face, just says, I know.
God damn it, I know.
I know.
Wait, but he's immortal. He didn't have to be saved, right?
No, he didn't have to be saved, but he has been, I think it's a thing where like they're immortal as in, as long as they don't get like decapitated or horribly injured, they're fine. But they can still be killed. Like
an elf. Like they could live forever unless they're actually like attacked and murdered.
That kind of immortal. Okay. So yeah, they will continue on forever, but they are still like able to be injured and able to be like killed. It takes a lot more, but it can happen. And he's not like about to die, but he's still recovering from like these these bullet wounds. And this is enough. The saint coming back to save him is enough to end the war. Peace talks happen. The entire time they're in her little, he realizes this is where she was staying when he didn't know where she was. They're in like her little cabin in the middle of fucking nowhere, like in the mountains. There's snow everywhere. She has to go out for 2 days with like a sled to go get supplies and then come back. And at first they kind of ignore each other, but then it's like, okay, it's the middle of winter in the middle of nowhere. I guess I need to help you make bread and tea and just like do the things we need to do in life. And so they basically start keeping house together for a couple of months until the weather starts to thaw.
But they don't like
And
talk really. They just like kind of live around each other.
they live around each other until like a month-ish in, she gets out a chessboard and says, do you want to play with me? And so they start playing chess every night. And that's when they start to kind of thaw.
Sexy
as
chess.
Just
Doesn't
as the
have a
winter
really, like,
thaws.
Boring immortality.
A sad
Yeah.
immortality.
Well, that's the thing. Like, if you're like, yeah, I can live forever, 50% of that has to be like finding and eating food still, probably, right? Just because
Yeah.
you live forever doesn't mean it's going to be exciting.
That's fair. That's fair.
Going to the bathroom.
I mean, you're gonna
Eating
run out of
food.
things to talk about eventually, and
I
then you're
mean,
gonna
yeah.
spend centuries together still, I guess.
Yeah, that's why they like start wars and stuff, I would assume.
Because they're bored. They just need a
They need
war to
stuff
do.
to say. And so it all kind of comes to a head because the entire time they're like snowed in, but he's like, I'm gonna leave soon and I'm gonna return to my work. Like, I'm gonna return to trying to restore Grisha to their rightful place. And she's like, okay, well, I'm gonna have to stop you. And finally she sees him trying to sneak out with her sled, and she like uses her cut to chop the sled in half, and then we get like a scary wizard power battle.
I thought you said something that you did not say.
Her cunt. Is
Yeah.
that weird? Yeah.
Well,
She used
also,
that.
when you
The
said
cut.
cut, I thought of
Muscles.
like the motorcycle club. Like a cut is like their like jacket vest thing. Like, oh yeah, my cut. Like she
Throws
used
her
a
vest
vest to
Yeah, I think
to
I forgot.
stop
I think
him?
I forgot to say it, but yeah, the thing that they use in like the show, like where they're like offensive magic, where they like go whoo and it like cuts things. That's what
Mhm.
Got it. Okay.
And so so they have a scary wizard battle, and they're like, nah, you, and finally it turns into just them trying to punch each other, and she tries to punch him and he catches her fist and pins her to a wall. He's like in her face and says,
Yes.
enough. And
Sexy
she-
wizard battle pinning.
Sexy wizard battle pinning, the inevitable end to all wizard battles.
Mhm.
And she says, don't go to Ravka, just let this be enough. Like, let our life together be enough. And he says, well then, let us being together be enough. Come with me. Like, we should be together, but I need to do this. This is what I've been trying to do. This is my whole plot line, girl. And so they basically like start to have sex while bantering about this, because he's like, tell me why I shouldn't go, while he's like unfastening her cloak, and she says, because I'm asking nicely, as she like grabs his hair. And that's the first time that they have sex, is like against the wall of her hut after having a wizard battle. Yeah, like in the snow.
But it's cold. Oh, those cold fingers coming back.
But it's like the snow is beginning to thaw. Like, it's springtime cold, not
All
winter
right.
cold.
It's wet. It's wet everywhere. Your feet are slushing in the wet grass next to the cabin.
It's wet everywhere.
They're
It's
inside, aren't they? Or are they outside?
They're outside.
Oh,
Because they were
They do
wizard battling outside.
They do eventually move inside, but they do begin outside against the wall.
Okay. As long as they move inside, I'm okay with that. I'm all right. I'll allow it.
And then there is this moment, which I just thought was really hot, where she says, you can have me or you can have Ravka. You choose. And then he kisses her and lifts her up against the wall, Emily. lifts her up against the wall.
Love it.
And he says, "You make me so weak." And she loves that he says that to her and just says, "Good." And then pulls his hair.
Yeah. Oh,
Yes.
hair pulling, lifting up against a wall. This is hitting Emily's checklist right here.
I know. I took a stab at it. I knew it would get yours, and I was like, Melanie might like this too, but I know at the very least I'll have Emily on board.
Notoriously loved.
Other people like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's taking I'll tell you my whole list of like sex scene tropes that I'm like, absolutely. If you ever want that, I'll write it down.
Sometimes those are the hardest scenes to write. Like Monday, my husband came home and I'd been writing all day. He was like, how's it going? Like, how's writing? And I was like, giving women orgasms is exhausting.
Yes.
So then they have sex again and it's really hot. And he says, and they're continuing to banter, and I'm going to read it because it's actually important to the plot. And he says, I won't let you go back from this. Like, this is what we do now. And she says, okay. And he asks her to say his real name, Alexander. And she does. And she kisses his scars, paying special attention to the ones that she gave him when she stabbed him 3 times.
Love it. Love it.
And he like says, "Do you want me, Alina?" And she says, "Fine." And then he just smiles and kisses her hand and goes back to eating her out. It's great. And he does stay. He stays with her for a few more months. But they both know that it's temporary. Like, they both know that like they can only stay in this cabin and have sex for so long, and eventually he's gonna want to go back to the work. And they basically start to move. Like, they move out of the cabin into like a city, and then they move into another city. And Alina can tell that the Darkling is slowly moving them there closer and closer to the capital. But she kind of just is like, there's nothing I can really do, so I'm just going to let you position yourself, and then I will just stay vigilant, you fucking weirdo. So, so after 35 years of this, they hear that there has been a rebellion by the same group that was in the original, like the first war that quote unquote killed him. And the way that this was kicked off is the royal family has been assassinated. And so all of Alina's descendants, all of her great-great-grandchildren have been killed in this rebellion.
Damn.
And she is devastated, and then she gets angry. And one morning the Darkling wakes and she's not there, and her tracks have led her to a rebel camp. And she has like torn her way through them, but then he like comes up on them, and he hears somebody say like, "We're gonna burn the witch." And she has been like strapped to like a post, and they've lit a fire. And the quote is, "Instead of faces, Alina sees her daughter Anna smiling as she learns how to swim for the very first time. Instead of screams, Alina hears the first waltz the orchestra played at her wedding when her husband told her there was more to them than anyone ever before." And the Darkling arrives as she's starting to burn, and saves her. And he's like, "What happened? Like, you killed a bunch of people and then you got captured? Like, what happened?" And she's like, I let them capture me. I wanted this to end. I lost the energy for it right in the middle, and I was just done because my entire family is gone. And that is like the turning point for her. She's like, okay, I'm gonna come with you. I'm gonna join you. We're gonna take back my throne, basically. And so that starts them like as the power couple, as Light Mommy and Dark Daddy.
Shadow Daddy, excuse you.
Shadow
excuse
Daddy.
You.
Light Mommy and Shadow Daddy, they start to pretend they're a husband and wife, and they just move closer and closer to the capital city. They start to get in, and there's like a little detail. There's like a little detail that the author throws in where it's like they're living in kind of a shared flat, and so they have to basically, when they're alone, fuck, because they're never alone. And so they're just like, we have to do it now. Energy. Yeah. We have to do it now. And so they basically ingratiate themselves to the rebel force, and Alina starts to come back into her power again. And the Darkling, like in his POV, he sees her start to come back to life, where she starts to lead an army again and make plans, and she comes forward with her powers and says, like, I am the reincarnation of Sancta Alina. I am her like great 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 granddaughter, and you should all rally behind me to take my throne back. And they do. And there's a war, and they fight for like a year, and then they finally achieve the thing that the Darkling has been trying to achieve for centuries. She is finally like in the seat of power and is named Queen of the Land.
Okay.
And she's sitting in front of the fire like the night that they've won, and she says, so they asked me to name you Queen's Consort or something, and I'm still trying to decide if I hate you and if you're dangerous. And he says, I just want balance. And what do you want? And she says, I just want to rest. She says, I want to know that taking this throne is what's best and not just something that I wanted. And I'm tired and sad, and I don't want to hate you anymore. I just want to be in peace together. And he says, I want us to stop being alone together. And she says, yes. And for the first time in centuries, she initiates a kiss, and they rule together for longer than anyone has any right to. And that's the end of that fic.
Oh my gosh. That was quick. You did a quick one.
Woo.
Good job.
Thanks.
That is I was going to say, that's what is nice about fan fiction, that it's like, oh, there is already this pre-established world, especially with this trope, because fantasy always has its own like rules and things. And I'm like, that was really fun. I really liked that. Plus, I really enjoy picturing Ben Barnes, just always. So
yeah. Well, and it was similar to like when I was picking it, it's similar to what you were saying, Melanie. Like, I wanted, like, world building, great, I like that, but I far prefer stories that focus on character, and this one felt like that. Like, it felt like they were.
I mean, that was a lot. Like, that was way more than I was expecting. I mean, that fanfic author went for it. Like,
they really did. They really, really did. And yeah, I really loved the like the thread of like what it really means to have immortality and to like watch your children grow old and die, and you're still there, and just like how truly horrifying that would be actually in life.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of Invisible Life of Addie LaRue a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Have you read that book yet, Melanie? It's really good.
They're just audiobook.
Yes, there are definitely really elements that are very similar in both stories of that.
Addie LaRue, I recommend to everyone. So I have a very quick game. It's just an either or game. So shadow powers or light powers?
Shadow.
Shadow. Although I don't know the full extent of either power, but shadow just sounds cooler.
I agree with shadow. And shadow, you can be like sneakier.
Yeah.
Light is like, I'm here, everyone. You will know.
I'm already like that. Yeah. I don't want to give everyone a migraine. I want to help them. I want to give them a sneaky migraine, not like a full-on migraine.
Immortality or a normal human lifespan?
Normal.
Yeah, I guess normal. I mean, after listening to that story, like...
It's a pretty hefty pitch. It's a pretty hefty pitch for mortality.
After chess for months, I think just normal life would be nice.
Listen, you could play chess forever. Literally. And then last one, I think I know the answer to this based on everything we've already said, but gallant prince energy or evil sorcerer energy?
Shadow Daddy. We're going to rename this. It's going to be High Fantasy, aka Shadow Daddy with Melanie Moschella. I'm so happy you brought that into our lives.
You're welcome. I'm so grateful. So yeah, that's so I think the thing we got to do is rate our stories. Yeah. Based on, out of 5 raccoons and trash cans. And it's usually a combination between literally like just how much you liked the story and then how much you think it fits the trope of the episode or the subject of the episode.
Okay. It aligned with, I should say. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So for the first one, what's that? Of Blood and Ash?
From Blood and Ash, yeah.
From Blood and Ash. Prose, sexual tension, and also got some real person emotion in there. Cons, unrealistic fighting, and way too many words, too many terms, I should say. I don't know, 3.5 raccoons. I don't want to chop a raccoon in half, but you know,
You have
It'll
to.
be
This is a
at
bloody rating system.
if you're making me.
3.5. You know what? It's a baby raccoon. That's the 0.5.
Okay.
It's like
I
three
was gonna
adults and
say
a
it's
baby
a
raccoon.
raccoon without an arm and without a hand, but okay, raccoon. A
Side
baby
note,
raccoon.
I actually used to volunteer with raccoons.
No way, really?
Yeah, like I got rabies shots and I volunteered with rehabilitated like raccoon babies. And
my
yeah, it's like a
gosh.
little bit horrifying.
That's
Just
so
like
cool,
hands.
though.
Like being
Yeah.
in a cage full of raccoons is just like 1,000 tiny hands all over your body, like all
Oh
at once.
my God. That's crazy. I can't even picture what that would feel like.
That sounds creepy,
Pretty
but also like
disturbing.
the idea of being
Yeah.
around baby raccoons sounds cool, but like, oh, that sounds creepy when
little
you put it that way.
hands.
It's cool
Tiny
until you
little
have to clean up after them because
Ah.
they just like poop all in their water and stuff. They are disgusting.
Oh no.
Not as cute
Anyways.
anymore.
If you were wanted to learn more about your spirit animal,
Start a War was the name of mine.
I'm sorry, what was it?
Start a War.
Start a War. So Start a War prose, man, they really went for it with time passage. Like time passage is not easy to write about, and lots of emotional depth. Cons, I was not super feeling the sexual tension in there as much, but I don't know. I'm gonna go with 4.
Thanks.
Okay. Alrighty
No
then.
chopped raccoons for me.
Only
An
a little
intact-
chopped raccoon for me.
An intact raccoon.
An intact
4
raccoon.
whole raccoons.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm glad we both got to like do those stories. I like that. I liked
Yeah.
your story a lot, Jess.
Thanks. I liked yours. I mean, I'd
Thank
read
you.
it, but
Yeah.
thank you.
I'm glad I got to reread my story.
am
That's
too.
what I think.
Any final thought?
I don't think so. I mean, that was great. I'm glad that I had some connection to both already. Yeah, thanks, Emily, for finishing that book for me.
Hey, I only did it up to like 85%. There's still that like 15%. You should like get it from Kindle and just like go like fast forward to the last couple chapters and just read that part, and then you can go
I
on
do
to
think
book
that
2.
was not like the best audiobook selection. That would be better for me to like skim over some of those terms, but
Yeah.
no.
I will say it's a lot steamier in book 2. So if you finish book 1 and then you can go into it, and then it'd be like, okay, because it's like right at the beginning it hits.
It is. Book 2 really gets into it when it comes to
It's
that.
not always
actually.
the case. Book 2 always has the steam.
A little bit, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then remind us, when does your wonderful series come out?
March 19th. So March
Okay.
19th, all 5 books come out. And yeah, I'm really excited.
Amazing. And is it physical copies? Like, where can the folks buy them? Do we know yet?
Yeah, it's available physical copies or ebooks from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, bookshop.org, which doesn't do ebooks, but just physical copies. And then the first ebook is actually free, so it's going to stay free.
Yay! Oh my gosh.
Jump into it without spending anything just to see if you want to keep going.
That's
Emily,
amazing.
You can do it for one of the episodes.
Yes. I'm going to try and finagle it into like a next episode. That's in March, but yes. How amazing. Oh my gosh. Usually we do a what are you reading, but we want to kind of keep focusing on your book. Just like quick questions. How about this? Is there any books that you would recommend that are like if you read this, you would like my book kind of thing? Do you have any recommendations like that? I know that was kind of on the spot.
I tend to throw in like Sarah J. Maas, Court of Thorns and Roses. And also I've heard from some early readers that, fans of Fourth Wing who like that kind of like, creature human relationship development.
Got it.
As well.
Yay! All right. Well, March is when all the Raek Rider series, I should say, the entire book series is coming out. Melanie, we're gonna see you.
Is a beast.
We'll see you at the Romantasy Festival again. That's happening March 22nd, 23rd of 2024. at Otherworld Theater in Chicago. Oh, people can follow you on Instagram and Facebook, I
Yep,
think.
absolutely.
Amazing. And then you have it's MelanieMoschella.com, right?
Melanie
Is that
K.
your
Moschella. Yeah.
Melanie K. Moschella. Thank you. So you can find everything about you there, follow you on all the socials, and we'll see you at the Romantasy Festival, and everyone buy the Raek Rider series. So
Absolutely.
Or at least download the free one.
Or yeah, at least do the first one. Figure out if you like it. Like and subscribe to the book and
Buy
to
the
this
rest.
podcast. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we did it.
We did it, and we're
Thank
just
you guys so much for having me.
You're welcome. We loved
Yes,
having
of
you. Thank you so much for
course.
being here.
Yeah.
Jess,
We're two raccoons
talking about the best trash in
town.
town. Okay. Bye.
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 Femmes Reading Filth is hosted, produced, and edited by Emily Barusian and Jessica Mall. Intro music by Tom Lehrer. Outro music by David Reddick. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Femmes Reading Filth. Thank you for listening.
Bye.
Bye.